Hello again, friends. And you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru right here on another winter's day. It's cold and snowing here. This day that we're recording, which is a day earlier than we usually record. The show will be released on normal schedule, whatever that may be. But I'm your host, the great Brian Last, and here to join in the winter's fun, the star of the Drive Thru, the retired post office ninja, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the wintertime. I'm not a fan of the wintertime because, as I've mentioned, every time I go outside to take Harley Quinn to do her business, I'm out there for 2 minutes. I'm blowing my nose and snurfling and everything for the next 20. Snot is running down my nose, my greasy fingers smearing my shabby clothes. I think I need an aqualung. But you know what? Friday, 48 hours ago, it was 60 degrees. Yesterday, it snow flurried. Today, it's in the 20s, plus the wind chill on top of that. And I believe they say this Wednesday or Thursday, right after I get my brand new furnace put in, it's going to be 60 degrees again and the potential of severe thunderstorms. But we haven't fucked the climate up at all. There's nothing to see here. It's all perfectly normal.
We have a winter wonderland here, snow everywhere.
Oh, yeah, you get a winter wonderland. You get the snow and your children playing. You know, that's one of the only things I like about an amusement park is the horrified screams of young children.
Oh, are you in that kind of mood today? That's the thing you like about amusement parks?
Well, no, I was in a good mood when I got up today. I got people annoying me. You know, there's a lot of annoying people in the world. I'm sure we'll talk about a few of them on the program today. But I do have some people that don't annoy me. I've got to make mention of a couple of things here. Hold on here. I know this is your program, Brian. But
you are the star.
Well, this is a heartwarming antidote from one of the, you got all different kinds of antidotes, amusing antidotes and heartwarming antidotes. Well, this is a heartwarming one from Ben in Baltimore. And you remember the Baltimore hosted the 1987 Crockett Cup Tag Team Tournament. And if the people have never been to Baltimore and seen the layout, the Baltimore Civic Center is right across the street from the Days Inn Hotel, a big high-rise thing downtown there, just blocks from the Inner Harbor. And the boys used to stay there, and the fans would congregate around the lobby area of the Days Inn, and then you just walk right across the street and in the Baltimore Civic Center, right? The arena, as it was later known.
Right.
So anyway, so Ben writes, outside, there was a hot dog vendor who was being very rude and nasty to me and my two brothers. He wouldn't sell us hot dogs for some reason. A gentleman walks up and orders 6 hot dogs. He then turns and hands them to my brothers and I. He removed his sunglasses, and it was beautiful Bobby Eaton. Another one. I'm 35 years later, I'm getting emails now that wasn't even invented then from people that Bobby Eaton did something nice for. It says he told off the vendor and was extra nice to us. We showed him our tickets. It's the first time a white man had ever done anything like that for me or my family. Beautiful Bobby Eaton is a Hall of Famer and one of my favorites. P.S. I love Harley Quinn and she is a star.
We need to get one of those maps that you can put pins in for all the different locations Bobby did something nice. A front porch in Alabama, here in Baltimore.
The guy down the block from the Sportatorium in Dallas, the poor old homeless bum that he probably got killed when he bought the bag of groceries for him and sent him off on foot. Also, there's another email from a dedicated listener of the Drive Thru. Because he mentions he likes you as well as me, but Thomas, and he's he's enjoyed some of the last few programs where we have had some audience interaction on one of our sponsors asked the question, what is one of the top answers you get when you type in "why is my" into your searcher gimmick on the internet, right?
That is correct. IOLO.
We have had some different interpretations of that and people typing different things in. Well, in this case, Thomas added the word instead of anus, because somebody, I think the last time we mentioned, they added the word, why is my anus? Rather just why is my, and it completely skewed the answers in a different direction. But in this case, equal time must be given. Thomas tried, why is my penis? Would you like to hear?
No, of course I wouldn't. Why are you encouraging them? And now they're copycats, and now you're encouraging this behavior.
It's an audience participation of endeavor here that people seem to, our community, as they say, our people out there, the cult of Cornette and the minions of the last legion.
The Legion of Last.
They're the Legion of Last. Well, it's the last legion I generally. But they're participating here. We're interacting. We got the social intercourse going on here. And the verbal we got all kinds of intercourse going on here. Hence, Thomas typed in, why is my penis? And would you like to go from 1 to 8 or from 8 to 1? We'll go from 1 to 8. We'll go from 1 to 8.
Options, not inches, correct?
No, yes, okay. The options, the answers. The number one answer on this particular searcher gimmick on the internet that Thomas looked up, why is my penis itchy?
All right.
Well, that's I can see that's a reasonable question. You would want to know about any part of your body, regardless, right?
Could be your underwear.
That's probably one of the answers that comes up later on. Number 2. Why is my penis dry? Now, that would be a problem.
I never thought about that.
Seems like that could be easily rectified with some lotion of some description or a little baby oil or something like that. You know, you could probably self-medicate there or you wouldn't really need to look that one up. Unless I guess it was peeling off like a goddamn leper victim. And then you might, holy shit, I'm leaving skin, all over all right, number 3.
I've never had a friend say, hey, I'm having a rough time dealing with dry penis.
I'm noticing cold weather with the high winds, my lips do get dry. So if some people have the wind blowing in the...
All right, that was number 2.
Number 3, why is my penis swollen?
Now that would be concerning.
There's a problem.
Yeah, that would be concerning.
Because then you don't know, would there be, if there was pain concentrated in one particular area and the swelling was off kilter, like one side or one area was larger than the other, you might suspect an insect bite of some description. But if the whole thing was just puffing right up like a blowfish.
Did Jerry Lawler have a kendo stick?
Oh, no, it was Dreamer that had these swollen zabadas there. So Lawler might have, that wasn't actually, that was his coin purse. That wasn't actually fucking Magic Johnson there. Now here's a question that I know it has got to be concerning, and also you would want to get an immediate answer to. Why is my penis bleeding?
That would be a problem.
And it doesn't really narrow it down to say like from an orifice that's already in it, or is it just randomly seeping through the pores or at different places or locations? So that wouldn't be good. Number 5. Why is my penis red? Because you're a Dalmatian? I don't, what? That wouldn't, it would have to depend on the shade as to whether that was off-putting or not, because it's not that far from a good hot pink to a red. If things are really, that might be one of those call a doctor after 4-hour deals. But if it was like fire engine red.
It's one of those things where you hope you don't have more than one of the different things there. Imagine you take a nice girl home and getting ready to make love, and you have to say, look, I can't do this. Not only do I suffer from dry penis, I have red penis.
Well, funny you should mention that, Brian, because number 6.
Oh, no.
Why is my penis red and itchy?
Get out of here.
So there's the combination. Now you can understand. The redness comes from the scratching coming from the itching. So you do the itching and then the scratching, and then it makes it red. Now we're getting somewhere. Number 7.
Yeah, we're getting somewhere, all right.
We're getting somewhere. Number 7, and the answer to this question, again, should be self-evident, but I guess it would depend on the degree of the condition being questioned here. Why is my penis sore after sex? 'Cause you did it right? I don't know. Should have seen the other guy.
What?
But anyway, so that's 7.
Is that all?
No, I mentioned 8 earlier, and that's 7. But just before we get to 8, because a pattern begins developing. So I just want to recap our answers from 1 to 7 so far, just to bring the people up to date, in case they joined the broadcast late. Why the answers to why is my penis on the search? Number 1, itchy. Number 2, dry. Number 3, swollen. Number 4, bleeding. Number 5, red. Number 6, red and itchy. Number 7, sore after sex. And number 8, so itchy.
So itchy?
So itchy. Why is my penis so itchy? Itchy. There's a pattern developing here of all the top complaints, all the top complaints that you could ever have about your penis. Itchy is placing 3 in the top 8. This is a problem that's I think it's becoming widespread. Certainly something ought to be done in the schools.
Is it wrong that so early in the show I'm wondering if we should transition to Manscaped or not? Will there ever be a better transition coming out of itchy penis?
Oh, yeah, we'll think of one. As a matter of fact, I do have an email later on in the program for those of you who want to stand by from a Manscaped customer. Well, if the people are now tuning in just to see our commercials and then they tune out the rest of the program. I do have another email here, Brian, real quick. And I know this is your program, and this is why I'm bringing this email up. So, but, we're going to go in all the various directions that you lead us in as the leader of this journey. But this is about the program. He's a devoted listener, and he mentions you and your conduct here. So I thought that we should bring this up at this point. It's from CJ.
Sounds fake.
No, because his email is CJ and then like 6 or 7 different numbers. So it's real. Good afternoon, Mr. Cornette. Not a wrestling question, but more of a general inquiry. Why is it that Mr. Last, at the beginning of his program, insists on stating that we are his quote-unquote friends? Who said we're friends? Does Mr. Last need friends? Is his social life so devoid of interpersonal connection that he feels the need to validate himself by misappropriating members of the cult of Cornette into his circle of compatriots? I have to be honest. I have enough friends, and I don't like most of the friends I've got. I felt that this was a business relationship. I use you for information and entertainment purposes, and you use me to increase the unit count on your various platforms. There's no need to complicate things any further than that, especially if it involves having to be considered friends with someone of such obviously questionable character? And if by extricating myself from the web of deception that is Mr. Last's friendship should cause some sort of mental disturbance in his self-esteem, allow me to suggest one of many local social clubs, bars, or other meeting places for adults where he could go to possibly meet other folks of disputed moral fiber to replace me. Signed, CJ.
Signed.
What say ye? Signed it right there, says CJ. What say you, Mr. Last? Does everyone need to be your friend?
Oh, I actually have to give an answer. I can't just say I'm fine with that and we move on. No, I'm in a new intro for the show. Hello again, friends. And you are my friends except CJ.
There you go. Now, because we can't have a disgruntled listener out there upset because of your salutatory at the top of the program. We want to keep CJ as gruntled as possible.
As gruntled as possible.
Keep him as gruntled as possible. So from now on, do that at the open of the program and exclude CJ so he'll keep listening. Hey, we can't afford to lose. You know, the ratings will suffer. We didn't get to number one by running off the listeners. Speaking of running people off, people have been running toward JimCornette.com. Brian, have you heard about this? Have you read about this?
Everyone's talking about this.
Everybody's talking about it. I was trending on Twitter. We might talk about that later on also because of the store opening and other little things as well. But people have been raving over the ease of shopping at Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com. Now, the site that Hotchkiss Featherbottom has put together, the orders are flowing in for the merchandise now that the Featherbottom family is firmly in charge. Fanny and Felcher Featherbottom standing by. It's only Sunday now. They can't fill any orders now because it's Sunday, but Monday morning, they're starting to hop onto this thing, and we're going to get this thing churning. And folks are going to be getting their merchandise quicker than ever, thanks to the assistance of the Featherbottom family. If you would like autographed Cult of Cornette membership certificates, pictures, behind-the-curtain graphic novel, the T-shirts you've been waiting so anxiously for to proudly display my face or slogans at your favorite Outlaw Mud show, all of that, DVDs, JimCornette.com right now. Just click on the collectibles button and feast your eyes and fantasize. And we have a system down, and the stuff that does not require autograph personalization, such as a T-shirt, we don't sign the T-shirts, folks. Those are going to start going out this week from the store opening this weekend. And the stuff that I'm going to be hand signing personally that I still do, and then hand it off to the Featherbottoms, that's going to be taking place later this week as well. So we're going to be getting things cooking, and it's just going to be lovely. I can't wait. You know, I ought to get a group picture of the whole Featherbottom family.
I would pay to see that.
You know, they're just so shy because there's still so many outstanding warrants. But I'm going to try to get everybody together, and maybe I'll have another fine sponsor, Paint Your Life, do a painting of the Featherbottoms.
I'll pay for that.
You will? Well, in that case, by God, I'm going to get a Featherbottom painting. Anyway, right. And I got somebody else in the Arcadian Vanguard / Cult of Cornette Network offices here. The lovely and talented Travis Heckel sent me, gifted me a book on Louisville television. He was out shopping somewhere. He told me the story. I forget. Doesn't matter anyway for the case of the story. And he found this book. It's from David Inman, who was a TV critic around here for ages. And it's a locally published thing, but they have gotten together a bunch of pictures from the studios and broadcasts of all the old local television programs in a city of Louisville. And
that's cool.
Well, there's a wrestling connection here because, as we've mentioned sometimes in the past, just like there's no local wrestling territories anymore, there's no local television anymore. No place for it's the same thing with comedians now. They've got these comedy clubs, but there's no Borscht Belt, right? There's no vaudeville. There's no place to go out for live performers to get that experience. They either go from, somebody's living room to fucking America's Got Talent or whatever. And it's a shame because do you know what Diane Sawyer's first job in television was, young Brian Last?
I don't.
Diane Sawyer's first job in television after graduating college was the WLKY TV Channel 32 weather maid here in Louisville. She's from Louisville.
Weather maid?
Weather maid. She was the first female weather personality in Louisville television history. And they get like a meter maid. They called her the weather maid. 1967. Boom.
Do you remember her?
Yes, I do. I remember yes. I remember all this shit. And that's the point I was making, like with wrestling, because of not only the fact that the local territories, they were there in your town every week, live at the arena, and they were on one of the 3 or 4 TV stations that you watched, etc. And sometimes it was your only professional sport. So they were the celebrities in town. The people on local television that you saw every morning, every afternoon, every evening, whether it be the news or the kids shows or the local horror movie host, the Fright Night with the fearmonger. These people were celebrities, and there was more of a performing aspect to local television then, because there were so many different varieties of programs. Now it's all news. If you don't be a newsman or newswoman, news personality,
newsmaid,
then you can't do local television. But the cover of this book, guess who's on the cover? Brian, you ought to know this. Who would I say is the most famous television personality in the city of Louisville's history?
Coyote Calhoun.
No, he was on the radio. The singing cowboy Randy Atcher.
Oh my God.
On the cover with it. Yeah. I'm telling you.
I remember him now, yeah.
And here's the thing. Randy Atcher, the singing cowboy, was on the strongest television station in town Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. every morning, every day of the year. They didn't rerun and they never got preempted. And with T-Bar v. Ranch, the kids show, and then every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, prime time, with Hayloft Hoedown, the country music show that was all local. And they had their own musicians and blah, blah, blah. But there's some great stuff in here. The story, by the way, hold on, I got it marked. The story of how Randy Atcher got with WHAS television is because he was a singer on one of the radio stations in town, WKLO. And there was an announcer at that radio station named Foster Brooks. You remember Foster Brooks?
Of course, yeah.
The comedian from the Dean Martin roasts in the 70s. He was all over network television.
Great drunk.
Yes, that was his whole that was his whole gimmick, and it wouldn't work today. But anyway, so WHAS offers to hire Randy Atcher away from the radio station. Atcher goes to the radio station and says, I'll stay here if you'll pay me what you're paying Foster Brooks. Because he knew that they were not only paying Foster Brooks' salary, they were paying his alimony. So the radio station said no, and Randy Atcher goes to WHAS. He debuts in 1950 on these television programs that I just mentioned, and they ran for 20 years. Not only did every kid in town grow up watching Randy Atcher, but then every adult watched him on Saturday night. The ratings of that show were the same thing as for all the network programs. And Randy Atcher's partner on T-Bar v. Ranch ended up being Foster Brooks's brother, Cactus Tom Brooks, who played the affable cowboy. And so WAVE TV3 got mad at the success the kids show was having and hired Foster Brooks to be a fucking cowboy on their kids show. It was cutthroat in the days of Louisville television, I'm telling you, but local TV, and everybody watched these people, right? That's what I was going to say is Randy Atcher was probably more popular than anybody in the city of Louisville, whether it be, including Muhammad Ali. He was in your home and entertaining your kids for 20 years. And there's nobody like that anymore left on local television. It's the same thing with local wrestling. There's no place for these people to learn how to do television and to do a variety of jobs and to, work out who they are and how they're presented best before they're on network television. And at the same time, no wrestler today, just like no local television personalities, are as over in specific markets because none of it is localized. None of it's personalized. Nobody knew who the fuck Jackie Fargo was in Denver, but he was God in, Chattanooga or Nashville. And that's with everything. There's statues of the Crusher in Milwaukee, but the Crusher probably didn't work in fucking Pittsburgh after 1963. Nobody would remember at this point. So that's what we've lost with local television and local wrestling is these. Randy Atcher, if he'd have run for mayor, he could have got elected, especially if the kids could vote. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I'm a big fan when you can find histories of local television or just books that aren't going to really reach out and get people in other parts of the country. There was a book several years back, I think it's out of print now, by David Halberstam, The History of Sports on New York Radio. And it was just fascinating, just going way back to the beginning when they first started broadcasting games and boxing matches and how it got to that point in the late 90s. And again, it's out of print now, I think, but it was a great resource and a really cool book.
Louisville was the 22nd city in the United States to get television. And the first station went on the air in November 1948, and it was unopposed until January of 1950. And there were only 2 stations in Louisville, Kentucky now, which is not, podunk. There were only 2 television stations here until WLKY came on the air in 1961, same year I was born. And there was only 3 until we got our first independent station in 1971. So they had to have program, and especially in the early days, a lot of people forget that even when, you're talking about the Dumont network that existed in the 50s, wrestling program, and the one on ABC that I think they had the one from California, right? And network television, even through the early 50s, was different in that, yes, they hit the big markets, especially when they got the coaxial cable hooked up to the West Coast and they could feed them live instead of doing kinescopes. But even here, because Louisville is on the East Coast, but until, what was it, 1950, 51, whatever, we still weren't hooked up to the network feeds. So the network TV shows would actually come into Louisville on a fucking tape, not a tape, but a film reel on a bus. And they'd show 4 or 5 days later or whatever for the first couple of years. And that's why they had to have so many local programs to fill up, some programming parts of the day. And until our third station went on the air, the 2 existing local network affiliates shared whatever the third network was program, either Dumont or later ABC, because there wasn't a third station here to fully affiliate with that network. So even into the early 60s and especially in the smaller markets, TV was not as standard as it is today. And sometimes you still couldn't tune into a regular program on Thursday night at 8 o'clock. It might not have got in on the bus yet. But anyway, Brian, would you like to sing along with me the closing theme of the T-Bar V Ranch show?
I sadly don't know it.
No, come on. You got to be able to. Every kid in the world knows this. I forgot you weren't lucky enough to have been born in Louisville. Because every morning at 9 o'clock for the preschoolers and for in the summertime or when school was out and if you were sick, they got you sooner or later. T-Bar V Ranch. They had the cartoons and the puppets and cactus, and they would have kids' birthday parties that were in the studio audience. That was the first and only time I was on television, or actually had a television taping until I went to my first wrestling TV taping in Memphis, because they got me in the bleachers for T-Bar V Ranch, and I had the opportunity to be interviewed if I wanted to be, but I was timid and scared and shy, and I just sat there. So they didn't take me back, my mom and dad. I didn't want to be on TV back then. But they would close the show. Here's Randy, the singing cowboy with his guitar. Here's Cactus Tom Brooks, the Western cowboy with no teeth, the Western clown. And they would get all the kiddies gathered around them and everything, and they would sign off until tomorrow. Brush your teeth each morning, get lots of sleep at night. Mind your mom and daddy, 'cause they know what is right. Lots of exercise each day and eat up all your food. And always wear a great big smile that makes you look so good. Be sure to look both left and right before you cross the street. And be with us tomorrow at 9. When it's T-Bar V Ranch time. Still brings a tear to my eye. See, that's another reason why that people are such assholes these days. And they don't have any common sense, and they don't appreciate anything, and they're not nice to other people, and they don't use their left and right turn indicators in their car because they didn't have Randy Atcher telling them how to behave.
Hey, speaking of TV, what have you thought of the Cosby documentary series?
Oh my God. I thought they buried R. Kelly deeper than a fucking well. Holy mackerel. Again, if you or me or just any schlub off the street tried to get away with the shit he was doing just once, we'd be under the jail. And he did this for 40 years. Multiple times over. What the how did nobody have the goddamn red alert out on him a long time before that? I am gobsmacked.
Yeah, that's really all you could say.
I'm just, and they let him out. Remember, we made a remark about it when they let him out last year for what was they let him out because of a technicality that at one point they had said, oh, we're not going to put you in jail.
Yeah, the prosecutor had said in order to get Cosby's testimony, they would never use it against him. Him admitting that he was drugging and raping women.
Well,
they would never use it against him.
How did that guy get his job?
That was the guy that defended Trump during the second impeachment.
Jesus Christ. So if I go out and rob a bank, and then the prosecutor tells me, well, if you'll just admit to robbing the bank, then we won't use that against you. And then I say, okay, yeah, I robbed the bank and I shot the guard on the way out. Okay, you're free to go. So just commit any crime and admit it.
Well, did you ever see the documentary series Paradise Lost about the West Memphis Three?
Oh my gosh.
Because that's what happened to them. They were imprisoned for however long, almost 20 years.
It was, God damn it. The crime involved somehow a railroad track, something. Yes.
Three kids were killed in West Memphis.
Yes.
And they arrested 3 teenagers who were into heavy metal, and none of the evidence, it turns out, had anything to do with them. But the only way, despite the fact that it became apparent that they had nothing to do with this, the only way Arkansas would let them out was an Alford plea, which meant they say, I'm still saying I didn't do this, but I'm going to plead guilty. And then they said, okay, that's good enough for us, you're released. So that's ridiculous.
Oh, Lord. Well, this actually, we have stumbled upon completely in an unplanned way, a perfect segue to This is your show. But should we bring up, since we're talking about people who obviously didn't do shit, should we bring up Jeff Hardy?
Okay.
Did you hear about Jeff Hardy finally apparently was able to obtain the results of the drug test that he took whenever he had what was described as his bad night in wherever, and they gave him the ultimatum to go to rehab or he was fired. And he said, fuck you, I ain't going to rehab, I don't need to. Because it turns out he was right. He passed the drug test. How did they run Jeff Hardy off into the waiting arms of his older brother for nothing? Can you reflect on this?
Well, the other funny part is apparently when it became apparent that he had not failed the drug test, they tried to get him to come back, including enticing him with being inducted into their Hall of Fame this year.
Oh, well, that would entice me, and we'll nominate you to be the nicest guy in prison, too. But how does that happen? How did they... okay, because of his track record, including the TNA pay-per-view that time and et cetera, people, it wasn't a surprising, shocking thing. Oh, no, not him. Nobody had that reaction, right? And I understand that because of his track record, people in the WWE or in the office would keep probably a little bit better eye on Jeff than some other people that they had no reason to suspect might be having an issue with anything. But I personally myself have future endeavored a couple of people in the wrestling business during my time for being under the influence of something, and it was fucking obvious. That's why they got future endeavored, because it was fucking obvious. They actually, in one case, I was trying to avoid it being obvious to me, and the son of a bitch wouldn't let me. Came right up to me where I had no other choice. But unless it was a situation, which apparently it was not, where there's no need for a test. There's no need. This is pretty much an open and shut case. As Dennis Condrey said one time on the interview, the case is closed. That there's no doubt. Then why didn't they wait until the results of that test came back before they gave him the ultimatum to go to rehab? Because they just ran the motherfucker off and let him go. They released him because he wouldn't do what they asked him to do that he knew he didn't need to do. And it's okay, well, then go wait. Without waiting for the drug test, unless he was fucking slobbering, eyes piss holes in a snowbank, tripping over his own feet and getting in his own way, somebody there didn't talk to him, just say, hey, Jeff, why did you leave the match and go out in the crowd? And did he have a coherent response? Coherent for Jeff? Sometimes he marches to the beat of his own drummer. Everybody, the agent report, we've read a few of those quotes from the night were that he had a bad night. Oh, what does that mean? He had a bad night? He had an upset stomach? He was depressed about his pet passing away? Or he was on fucking drugs? If he had a bad night and it's not obvious, not apparent that he was under the influence of something and he just did some screwy shit, then I think it would have behooved them to say, here, piss in this, and we're going to wait a week or however long we've got to wait to determine whether you're just a goof or whether you're under the influence of something or whether you're just jacking off. Especially one of the biggest stars in the business that could potentially and probably will be going to the opposition that we've already fed enough talent for a fucking mid-sized territory and can revitalize the moribund, Google it, kids, it's a great word, career of his brother on the other roster at the same time. And now they're already teasing it because they've got Hardys wandering through the crowd on every channel. What the fuck? How could this have happened, Brian? You have never worked for these people. I have. And this is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard of them doing. I can't explain how this could happen.
We talk a lot about the lack of structure in AEW, but you also got to talk about the broken structure in WWE. This is a breakdown of a lot of different things that this would happen. And again, it all played out in front of the fans because he walked out and it was filmed and everyone knew about it. And it turned out he had the trump card. He knew that he was going to pass the test. They look awful here. And again, they went back to him after the fact and tried to entice him to come back.
We've slandered you publicly in front of the world. We've demanded you go to rehab, and then we've released you for doing nothing more than being goofy at a house show. And now we want you to come back and we'll put you in the Hall of Fame. Fuck you.
It's a mess over there. Lack of structure in AEW, but he's not going to have to put up with this.
Well, there's a few wrestlers that's been there that are names that we can't seem to get rid of. They stay year after year. I wonder, is Goldberg just going to turn to dust in the ring? Do you think it's at some point? Hey,
can I ask you a question? If you're
Yes.
AEW now, knowing all this, do you sign Jeff Hardy?
Of course. Are you out of your mind? Because when it was thought that he might have an issue again, then that was something that everybody, including me, was like, well, you got to hopefully he gets the help or whatever first or blah, blah, blah. But if it come to find out that the WWE just not only was incompetent enough to turn over one of the guys that still gets one of their biggest reactions and is one of their best name recognition talents, but also was completely clean and didn't do anything they accused him of. Fuck. And if I was Jeff, I would be calling Stephen P. New. They slandered me in front of the whole world. That's fucking insane. I would imagine that as soon as, or I won't say I imagine, if I was Tony Khan, I just shuddered at that thought. As the minute that he's available contractually, whatever the separation agreement was or whatever, or whenever they can book a good-sized arena for a major live production in the state of North Carolina, I'd have to try to do another Punk in Chicago business with the Hardy Boys reuniting in Fayetteville or whatever. Because people would throw some babies in the air over that.
And we don't even know exactly who you blame with WWE, right? We don't know if this is talent relations or if this is, who do you blame for this?
Well, and I don't know because I'm not there and haven't been there in a long time. If this was, if honestly, there's so many people now you can blame, right? Because there's such a larger staff now. We've been talking about agent reports on the program here and on the experience for the past couple of weeks. If this was 1998, you could blame one of the two agents that was at the house show because they would have put it in the house show in the agent report, or they would have observed it, or they would have raised the issue. He wandered off in the crowd. We're going to have to talk to him. What's going on with him? But if Jack Lanza had been there, he probably would have been able to tell whether Jeff was under the influence of something or just being that free spirit that we all know and love. And probably, who knows now what happened? Since he wasn't fucked up, they made it sound like he just wandered out into the crowd. Since he wasn't fucked up, did one of these numbnuts that he was working with potato him or jerk him around or do something to where when he tagged out, he just said, fuck it? And then he starts... I've been in a couple of rings where I've reflected on my fucking position in life. And whether it was in Tulsa when I was afraid I wasn't going to get back to the dressing room alive without being stabbed, or whether it was in one of those shitty towns that WCW ran the last year we were there, where there's nobody in the fucking crowd and the match was the shits. And everybody was dead and nobody cared, and I'm just there going, fuck, I don't want to do this anymore. What? I don't know. So, but that's the thing. It's easy to explain if he was zombified and cruising on Lake Havasoma and he wanders out and starts posing for pictures with the crowd because he's in another place. But if he ain't under the influence of anything, that meant that something happened where he just didn't give a shit. and if you don't give a shit, chances are he was not going to be fucking aggravated if they released him. So that's what I'm saying. If Jack Lanza had been there, he would have pulled him back in and said, what's going on? What are you doing? And he would have been able to tell whether Jeff probably was under the influence of something or not. And he would have either put in the agent report, Jeff's cranky about, say, he wasn't fucked up, but he was cranky about something, or he's not happy, or somebody ought to talk to him and pep him up. He was just whatever the fuck, he's wandering around. Or at the very most, said, well, before we make jump to any conclusions, we, test him to make sure, but I think he was all right, but he's not motivated, or something else is going on. Or he just honestly wandered out there and gave the people a thrill by putting his hand around them and taking a picture with them while the finish was going on. And he won't do it again. But because now this is such a goddamn giant clusterfuck of a publicly traded company, and the information goes through so many hands, and there's nobody, I guess, I can't think of anybody that would be there now that has Jack Lanza's experience. That would have been 35 or would have been 40 years in 1998 that he'd have been in the business. So, I don't know how that mushroomed into, we're going to demand he go to rehab or fire one of our biggest stars because he wandered out in the crowd after the hot tag.
I think one of the saddest things about this is that Jeff Hardy did have the time and did have an opportunity here to begin a career in coding.
Well, you know what? That would have solved a lot of the issues. Although, since that was such an abrupt transition, I might have gone with, are these fucking WWE agents speaking in code? And possibly they need to have a better Rosetta Stone to translate the code because they got it all wrong. But folks, regardless of where you want to go, one of our favorite sponsors and one of the favorites of all of the Cult of Cornette members is back with us again. They never left. They love us. We love them. Love is in the air. Codecademy. If you want to change your career and you don't want to have to be forced to go to rehab to do it, there's never been a better time to become a programmer. And with Codecademy, you can learn to code on your own terms. Actually, when you make up your own terms, sometimes it's confusing because then you're not talking to the rest of the class in a language they understand. However, we're living in a fast-changing world. We just talked about local television a few minutes ago. Things are changing like crazy. And one of the best ways to succeed in it is to learn to code. So if you try Codecademy today and see where coding can take you, they can help you reach your coding goals. And I'll tell you what, I know for a fact that people out there, the first thing they do when they wake up in the morning is think about their many coding goals. And of course, Codecademy is an immense help in learning skills like building websites, troubleshooting tech issues, transitioning into it. If you want to transition, folks, then Codecademy can help you. They can find you the surgeons. They can find you the fashion designers.
No.
They can help with the entire transition.
No. Completely different thing. Transition
into a new career.
Into a new career.
Career, not gender. Okay. Over 50 million people already know that Codecademy is the best way to learn to code. And actually now, boy, you better jump in because they're going to have to start knocking a few of those people off. If 50 million people know the code, then that's too many people, and loose lips sink ships. So some of those people are going to have to go. We're going to have to send the cleanup crew out after some of those folks that already are in on this and know the code to keep it secret.
Nobody has to go.
Well, go away type of thing. It's a euphemism. Codecademy not only teaches you job-ready coding skills, but helps you build unique projects for your portfolio. I once built Fort Boonesboro out of toothpicks. You can earn certificates and even prep for technical interviews. I don't know why they'll be interviewing you about technical things when all you know is how to speak in codes, but nevertheless, you can choose what to learn. I'd like to learn more about eating, but also you can talk about building basic websites all the way up to artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is something that's going to be taking over the world in the near future because it replaces the actual natural intelligence that nobody has anymore. So no matter what your experience level, you're going to be writing real working code in minutes. Not a motherfucker's going to be able to read it, but you're going to be writing it. You can learn coding languages including Python, HTML, SQL, JavaScript, and more. If you're not sure where to begin, just like me, Codecademy will point you in the right direction. Even if it's down, straight down to the depths of hell, or just straight out the door because they don't want to work with you. You can take their programming personality quiz and get tailored career advice. When you take their personality quiz, they'll know everything about your personality, and then they'll be able to tailor things to instruct you to do, such as overthrow governments, commit covert assassinations. But don't worry, your memories will all be wiped blank. An interactive platform helps you learn by doing.
Your memories will be intact.
Well, except for the part they don't want you to remember. You can land your dream job in web development, programming, computer science, data science, and science fiction. Folks, join the over 50 million people learning to code with Codecademy and see where coding can take you and get 15% off your Codecademy Pro membership when you go to codecademy.com. That's CODECADEMY. You know, if you can't spell that fucking word, you're probably going to flunk out of this shit anyway. Codecademy.com and use the promo code EXPERIENCE for 15% off. Should we mention that there was nothing on the WWE or AEW programming on Friday night that was worth talking about? Should we just mention that now at the top of the program, just get that out of the way?
Yes, here at the top of the program.
Well, it's still not the tippy top, but it's teetering. This program has been teetering for a while now. On SmackDown, it wasn't worth 2 hours of my life to see a Paul Heyman pre-tape and Charlotte and Ronda Rousey scuffle for 90 seconds at the finish. And did you hear what was on Rampage?
Actually, I didn't hear anything about Rampage this week.
Well, there's a reason for that. They've given up completely. I've seen studio wrestling in Montgomery, Alabama that had more star power. Listen to what they expected us to watch. The Hardley Boys versus Roppongi Vice, which is poor old Rocky Romero and the guy with his mother in a minivan. Dr. Britt Baker versus Robin Renegade. Hook wrestled Blake Lee. And I must admit, it would be worth seeing Hook somebody else, but Blake Lee. And the main event, of course, Jungle Boy and Dino Douche against the Ass Boys. That was national television.
Did they finish up the big Jurassic Express Ass Boys feud, or is this going to continue?
Well, the babyfaces always win because they get their feelings hurt if they don't. But you can't tell whether the feud is finished or not because the babyfaces always win. But good Lord, Powerhouse Hobbs, he was just on TV 3 months ago. No reason for him to go out there and drop somebody on their head, get a good win. But anyway, so that was Friday night's programming, in case anybody was wondering what's going on. I'll tell you, I said I'd rather clean my office than watch wrestling on television. Now, did I tell you another thing I found in my office? We've been going through the agent reports, going back through some of the documents. I found my NDA file. I did, several times over the many years that I've been involved in wrestling, some knucklehead has had the idea he was going to start a wrestling promotion. And of course, an NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. And sometimes in business, when people are letting somebody in on something that the general public doesn't know about, then they sign those things so they can't spill the beans and, loose lips sink ships. Well, I've signed a number of those. I keep a copy all the time. You're not supposed to disclose the non-disclosed, so I can't disclose who the non-disclosed might be with, but just in case anybody ever calls bullshit on me having any non-discloses, if you want to bet a large sum of money on it, I keep them around. But it's your show, Brian. Go ahead.
My show, and we have lots of things to talk about. I will say, as we are recording a day earlier than usual, I woke up this morning a little later than usual. I've used usual twice now.
That's unusual.
Usually I'd wake up a little earlier, but I slept late and I woke up to see you were trending once again on Twitter.
I blame myself. I asked you before we went on the program, I said, should we even refer to this? But since I'm trending on Twitter on Super Bowl Sunday, for fuck's sake, like people ain't got anything else to do. But in this case, it was kind of in a babyface way. Thank everyone for their support and their kind words on the immolation that I had to perform on Twitter this morning. But I don't even know how this happened, because I get up this morning to make sure that the store at JimCornette.com is running like a well-oiled feather-bottom watch. And then I turn on the Twitter machine. And again, poor Uncle Dave has somehow, overnight, I guess, I know there's a time difference here in California, but it was late at night. It had to be, because it was about 8 hours previous this, and this was 8:30 in the morning. So he's up at midnight. And he's retweeted a tweet that I tweeted. God, this sounds so ridiculous, grown men, but you're just using those words. He retweeted a tweet that I tweeted a year and a half, almost 2 years ago.
I have it right here, June 7th, 2020.
Okay. And it was to him, because as I recall, this was one of the tweets that either escalated or pretty much finished off the hostilities and the relationship between me and Uncle Dave.
I remember what this was.
I don't. Okay, then what was the context? He was in some way on Twitter again, verbally filleting Twinkle Toes, and it just caught me wrong. But I think it was directed at me. Was it not?
It was because we had a question on the drive-thru. Again, this is a long time ago, but I remember this, about Harley Race's opinion of Kenny Omega from some training seminar there was years ago. And we talked about it. We read the letter from someone who was there. And Dave, randomly, out of nowhere, I mean, this seems to happen a lot, out of nowhere, Dave's added on Twitter, said, here's the tweet. Somebody sent me a clip of Cornette saying why Harley Race didn't like Kenny Omega. Hope Cornette mentioned how much Thez, Gotch, and the other purists from the prior generation hated Harley Race. Would be even more rich if the subject was stupid moves that aren't real. By the way, just listen to the clip. You would have heard if that was one of the things, which I don't think it was.
No.
But that was...
It was actually a report from somebody that had been at a camp that Harley had that Omega was at, that didn't have a fond opinion of the guy either, and said that he was rude and a twat or whatever. So go ahead. Someone
sent him a clip. He didn't watch it. He started jumping to conclusions about what he thought would be there in a way to put you down. So that's when you replied, why don't you two get a fucking room? Does it really gall you that badly that most people who have an idea what this business is supposed to be can't stand fucking Twinkle Toes McFingerbang? That was the tweet from June 7th, 2020 that Dave decided to retweet last night, apparently.
Okay, but now I got to ask you something, because you know more about these things than I do. But when I scroll down through my Twitter screen here on my big-ass computer so I can see that little small print, it takes me forever just to get to yesterday. How did he find a single tweet from a year and a half ago?
I don't know what caused this to be on his radar.
how can you just go back and get that to begin with, even if he wanted to? How has he kept track of where that could be located? How it could be located? Is there a way to do that?
It's like his office. It may be a mess, but he knows where everything is.
Oh, God. All right. So anyway, so he retweets that and with the, boy, this aged well. Well, if you've got that shit, and read his, boy, this aged well.
So 13 hours ago, as we are recording, Dave retweeted your tweet from June of 2020. Tweets that age badly for $100. 18 months later, he wins almost every Wrestler of the Year award and is the first guy to hold 3 major world titles at the same time in decades.
He's, in the past year and a half, he's won almost every major award I've given him. And what are the major titles? AEW, a title that didn't exist 2 years ago. Was that Impact, right?
Impact.
Seriously?
And AAA.
And AAA. And we've seen the Mexicans will use almost anybody down there. But nevertheless, this is comparable to when Vader actually had major world championships across multiple continents and fucking deserved them. I don't know. But what he's saying basically, well, he won my award and he won the award of the magazine that wants to sell magazines because he's on the cover. What the... Again, I don't tweet Dave anymore to go along with the not emailing him anymore and not speaking to him on the phone anymore. And if I ever went anywhere in person, it would go along with not speaking to him in person anymore because he's a goddamn lunatic and he lost his mind. And if it was so important to him, as I've mentioned, if it was so important to him that I not take the piss out of his favorite little play wrestlers, that he's willing to knock me after 35 years of friendship, blah, 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 then fine. I told him he can piss the fuck off. So, and I don't recall Brian, except when we give him credit for a news item that we might pick up out of his publication. We say, oh, this is straight from Uncle Dave. I don't recall going on a campaign to systematically, every time somebody sneezes, remind them that Dave Meltzer has lost his fucking mind and is a backstabbing piece of shit that turned on every friend he had for 30 years because they didn't like trampoline play wrestlers. We don't do that as a matter of course, but he sits there and waits for an opportunity that since something crosses his mind and throws his panties in a bunch and his left testicle is lopped over his right testicle and he's uncomfortable. And so he tweets my tweets to him from a year and a half ago like a possessed, stalking, jilted ex-lover. And I got to be honest with you, Dave was never that good. And he's got to goddamn just continue this all over fucking Twinkle Toes. It's not any other opinion that I have, anything else that I've expressed about wrestling or life in general. It doesn't matter. But if I fart in the general direction of that ballet dancing, prissy prancing, finger pointing, gesticulating, masturbating piece of shit and his two fucking brotherly, hardly friends, then Uncle Dave, like a white knight in shining tinfoil, comes to the fucking rescue over and over again. And a year and a half later, he's still mad about the same insults. So that is why that I responded to him, because it struck me wrong first thing in the morning to see this fucking lunatic stalker that I have continuing to slander me for having what is becoming a more and more popular opinion that Kenny Olivier can go piss off. He's the shits, especially when even people that formerly appreciated in some fashion what he was doing are now realizing, well, no, now he's in the same company with, I don't know, Bryan Danielson and et cetera. And, come on. But that's when I had to, unfortunately, tell Dave again that I'm more than willing to ignore him if he ignores me, but I am not going to goddamn wake up first thing in the morning and see this shit when it's already cold outside. You can read my tweet back to him if you'd like.
I will, but I also do want to say this is part of the story that I think a lot of people miss from way back when the relationship first went sour. Dave was still calling you and still emailing you while on his board and on Twitter, at times for no reason whatsoever, just attacking you.
Just apropos of nothing. Just apropos. And by the way, Cornette's wrong about Twinkle Toes.
And like you said, it's all about Omega and the Bucks.
And I had to fucking forcefully on a couple of different occasions inform him to stop fucking emailing me like there's nothing wrong after he stabbed me in the back and walked around with the fucking knife.
So you responded to his retweet and comment with, Dave, you do remember those awards are all works and you give him half of them yourself, right? After almost 2 years, still with this? If you loved your wife as much as Harpo here, you'd still have one. Quit embarrassing yourself or I'll start doing it for you.
And unfortunately for Uncle Dave, a lot of people seem to wait, hide and watch for somebody to just piss in his fucking mouth because I got a bunch of hoorays and hurrahs over that because he's become insufferable with his fucking cheerleading. And it's gone past somebody being a paid PR person, somebody having a legitimate fixation. I even criticize MJF and CM Punk every once in a while. But my God. So, Dave, you want to keep fucking finding my tweets and rehashing old shit? I'll be more than happy to blister the fuck out of you in a public forum anytime, any place. I will fucking make you goddamn wish you had never been born, and I will make you curse your mother for the day she gave birth to you. I will belittle you, trash you, revile you, verbally eviscerate you, and otherwise break my foot off in your ass if you don't just leave me the fuck alone, you fucking fanatical freak. I don't know which is worse. The positive fixations you have or the negative ones. You won't leave me alone because I don't like your little fucking buddies. I can only imagine how they feel when you're goddamn slobbering all over their fucking jocks all goddamn time. I think it would be worse if he was still liked me. He would be fixated on me more than he'd be fixated against me, and I'd have to get a tire iron to pry him off. It's like a dog that won't quit humping a leg. Anyway, Dave, this is your show.
Dave has responded.
Jesus Christ. All right.
You, who know better and know they are voted on, and multiple publications and sites do them independent of each other, are going to lie to your fan base to this degree? Dude, you've literally...
Dude! I'm dude now? Oh, he's gone too far.
Dude, you've literally become Trump.
Oh, see now?
You struck a nerve. You struck a nerve.
You gotta fucking go there. You've got to call. There's no reason to call any human being a fucking Trump. Besides the fact, Uncle Dave dipshit, I can't tweet now because we're actually recording, but God, they're all voted on. Yes, by all the readers of your publication. Brian, let's take a poll right now. Every listener of my podcast, every member of the Cult of Cornette, who's more popular, me or Vince Russo?
I think we know what the results will be, clearly.
There you go. He's been, as I've mentioned, verbally filleting these fucking guys and telling his listeners and his readers how great they are. And he is fucking, because of his not only his tenure around wrestling, Dave's, his experience around wrestling, all these many years, they think he knows what he's talking about. They don't realize he had a nervous breakdown and it had lost the plot. And all of his longtime friends have remarked on this, but they don't know that because they don't know him personally. And they don't fucking know the trials and travails that has apparently allowed him to lose his fucking mind over the last 10 years or so. And they think he knows what he's talking about. So when he tells them that the Hardley Boys are a great tag team, the readers of his publication, which also happen to mirror the fucking, it's the equivalent of the Bobby Soxers after Bobby Sherman in the 60s. The people who buy magazines and read the newsletters love the Hardley Boys and Twinkle Toes. The people that don't watch wrestling anymore because they're offended by those people that make up a much larger segment of society, including much of my audience, has a different viewpoint. That's why we don't watch wrestling anymore. So if you want to sell a newsletter or a magazine, put the dipshit on the cover that these goddamn teeny boppers are still going gaga over, except now the teeny boppers are not 16-year-old cheerleaders with nice legs and training bras. They're 35-year-old fat guys with fucking beards and pizza stains on their t-shirts. Teeny boppers have changed too.
If you want to call out Jim and say that he's Trump, call out wrestlers who actually gave money to Trump, like your buddy Jericho,
Yes.
who never gets bad coverage in The Observer ever.
Or members of their family that participated in the insurrection to overthrow the government. But me over here that has done everything short of fucking taking Harley Quinn to Washington to bite him in the ass to get him out of office. I'm Trump. Here the problem with Dave is he tries to verbally joust with people and or make a witty comment. And he knows, being compared to Trump, I could call him a piece of shit. He wouldn't mind that, but being compared to Trump, he's trying to get an oomph out of me so that I'll continue to bandy this around so that maybe he'll feel important. But the point is, I trended on Twitter again. Thank you, Dave. Every time you do this, I've just opened the store at JimCornette.com, so I appreciate the payoff. But can you leave me the fuck alone so I don't come home and find Harley Quinn boiling in a pot of water on a stove? You fucking freak.
Well, perhaps Dave just needs a good night's sleep.
A good night's sleep is the answer to a lot of people's problems, and they are very hard to obtain. The good night's sleep is very hard to obtain, especially if you're not on the right surface. Brian, you know this as well as I do.
Of course.
Because you got to be on the right surface, the right platform. You got to be comfortable. So that way you can count those mental sheep. Or in some cases, if you have enough money, you might have live sheep in your bedroom.
Let's not encourage that.
They cost a lot. And they are messy.
Sheep. Yes.
But if you've got an extra bedroom that you can herd the sheep into after you're finished, counting them, of course, then that would be preferable. But let's say that the sheep don't work. If you're laying on a brick wall, you got to have something comfortable, and that's where the Helix Mattress comes in, folks. Helix Sleep has a quiz that takes just 2 minutes to complete, and then it matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress for you. Why would you buy a mattress made for somebody else? Because with Helix, you're getting a mattress that you know is going to be perfect for you. You take this quiz on their website. It will ask some probing personal questions about sexual positions and number of partners.
No. There are no probing questions. There's no probing about your probing.
There's no, I'm sorry. I was thinking of another quiz that I took online recently. So no, they just ask you about how you sleep, on your side or on your back. And they've got soft, medium, and firm. They got mattresses that'll cool you down if you sleep hot. And also the thing comes in a box delivered right to your door that you can take and place by yourself. No team of men coming in to move your furniture and kick your dog and potentially steal things when they deliver this mattress. You can move it right where you want it yourself. You just go to helixsleep.com. That's HELIX. helixsleep.com/JCE. You got to take that 2-minute quiz. Once again, no probing questions. That was another product I was ordering. And they'll match you to a customized mattress that'll give you the best sleep of your life. It's got a 10-year warranty. If any time in the next 10 years you go to sleep and don't wake up, they will give you your money back. And you get, no, wait a minute. It's 10 year. If you can go to sleep and wake up still, they'll give you, if you don't wake up, they won't give you your money back.
Everyone's going to wake up, but let's not talk about people not waking up.
Well, over the next 10 years, you don't know what could happen. But folks, every night you're going to go to sleep, you're going to sleep well, and you're going to wake up the next day. As long as you wake up, you can't get your money back. But you get to try it out for 100 nights risk-free, and they'll even pick it up for you if you don't love it in that time. Try not to get any stains or any type of bodily fluids or some type of transmissions on it, because they got to go around and sell this to some other sucker if they pick it up. And
that's not the way it works. That's not the way it works.
Do they donate them somewhere?
I don't know what they do, but you get a brand new Helix mattress when you buy from Helix.
Yeah, well, we can probably, we'll check with the Helix folks, see what they do with those, because if they're not that badly stained, I'd take them. Anyway, they've even got financing options and flexible payment plans. Flexible payment plans on a mattress you can get flexible on. Folks, it's a great night's sleep. It's never far away. And right now, Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners at helixsleep.com/JCE, up to $200 off and 2 free pillows. You can stick one of those pillows on either side of your head. You won't know shit's going on in the outside world. helixsleep.com/JCE.
Well, Jim, let's now move on here with the drive-thru. And I did want to bring something up because in the past, whenever a wrestling historian has passed, we've talked about it on the air. And just recently, in the past week, I saw the news that David Williamson passed away. It's a name that wouldn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but someone who years ago I knew a little bit, and someone who you've known for many years. And like I said, a wrestling historian who sadly passed away.
I saw it. I retweeted. I'm pretty sure it was Greg Oliver did a story on Slam Wrestling.
Yeah, great article.
And, I've known David since, I guess I met him. We would have corresponded probably in the 70s, but I met him for the first time in 1983 when I went down for the summer of 83 in that memorable Georgia experiment that didn't work to run the Georgia territory. But David was from Cleveland, Tennessee. That's outside of Chattanooga. And he had been through territory after territory over the years. He was a huge fan of just wrestling in general, but he had started going to the matches that Nick Goulas promoted in Chattanooga in the 60s. And also Cleveland is on the way to Knoxville. So he got to see a lot of Knoxville wrestling. Also was kind of in the overlap of the TV signals. So he grew up through the 70s Chattanooga Harry Thornton era and still got to see Southeastern Championship Wrestling. And then I believe he was there when we had that Midnight Express Fantastics Chattanooga match at the UTC Roundhouse that everybody loved, went the whole hour on Worldwide Wrestling. He would come to big shows. He was at the Night of Legends, a lot of Smoky Mountain shows, but also just little spot shows. You would see David show up to, just to see wrestling and just to see the boys. He just loved the business. And, I'd seen him, several years ago at a few of the fan fests in that area. I think one in Rome, Georgia, I think he went to. And I'd just spoken to him. Probably, now time blurs. Was it last year? I spoke to him on the phone. Maybe late the year before. He had sent me a DVD, as he always would. It goes back to VHS, and even before that, in the 70s, he sent out clipping sheets, Xeroxed, Xeroxed, copied. At least I didn't say mimeographed. Copy sheets with newspaper clippings and ads for wrestling in different territories, and little handwritten, documentation of results and things. And I used a lot of his clipping sheets when I was putting together with Mark James Rags, Paper, and Pens because David was able to cover, a different side of the state with some of those clippings and newsletters and things than, the Memphis end. So, he would always send, like I said, then VHS tapes and DVDs and things that came up of old matches and stuff that he found and traded for. And he would do it, for nothing in return. He sent all the guys stuff with, with their pictures in the ads or results of some of their matches or whatever. He just, he loved the business and loved that history of it and wanted to preserve it as much as possible. And I didn't even know he was sick. And I said that to you earlier, and that's been said many times, but apparently he just found out in like November, just recently, that he had cancer, and he was 70 years old. I knew he was a little older than me. I didn't realize quite that much, but, just a nice guy, not a, overwhelmingly talkative personality, but just a good old nice guy that loved wrestling and liked to talk about it and trade results and videos and things with all the fans. And especially he had, a soft spot in his heart for Tennessee wrestling, like, we all did growing up seeing that. So I turned, it was yesterday, I guess, I turned on, the internet, and I just, as soon as I saw David Williamson was the subject of some story, I said, oh shit, something's happened. Because David, he never looked after publicity or sought it out. I don't even know if he was on Twitter. He was on some of the message boards and things. What was his handle on the message boards was Sir Tojo. His Tojo Yamamoto was one of his favorites. But I knew it had to be something bad because he's not the type of person that got written about. It just a lot of people wrote to him at various points. I'm sure I'm sorry to hear about that.
I could still see his handwriting because he would handwrite everything. Yeah. And, I always thought it was cool too because he started sending me stuff in the 90s after Scott Teal. I think he had my address in the issue of Whatever Happened To, which was a great newsletter for different things I was looking for. And David Williamson started writing to me and sending me stuff. And it would always say, in tribute to Terry Justice. And I always thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
That he saw what he did as continuing on what Terry Justice did.
And that's with David, he'd forget what he sent you sometimes. So you might get the same clipping sheet 5 times over the course of, 8 or 10 years, but it was great stuff he'd found at the library. When he would go and look up at the old wrestling ad stuff that he had saved when he was a kid, different program sheets and just random stuff. But it was so cool. I have a ton of that stuff here, and I'll continue to use it for years as, research.
All right. Well, let's get some questions here on the show this week, Jim. And we've got a ton of them sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com in the past week. Let me get rid of this Tony Khan for Congress one. We don't need to do that.
We covered that on the experience. Oh, and by the way, apparently, after you and I have researched this, the Saudi Arabia Super Show Elimination Chamber is next Saturday. So we are going to cover that on the experience, right? Is that what we decided?
On the experience? No, I think on the drive-thru.
On next week's drive-thru. Oh, the experience will come first. We'll drat the luck. We'll have to find something else to talk about.
All right, well, let's get our first question. Let's see what we have to talk about here today. Jim, this was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Chaz in a town in South Africa. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this.
No way to spell it.
GQEB. Now it gets easy. ERHA.
Oh, it gets easy after that. All right, well, from Gahuba.
Here's his question. I'm an avid listener of the show for the last 2 years, and I'd like to say thank you for all the insight and laughs during the dumpster fire that was 2020 and 2021. Especially for us here in Gabertha, South Africa.
Gabertha.
I'd love to hear you and...
Don't pronounce it correctly. Pronounce the man's hometown correctly. Gabertha.
I'd love to hear you and Jim attempt saying my city's name. My question relates to recent comments made by Chris Jericho in an interview, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. Here's Chris Jericho comparing himself to The Undertaker.
Oh, boy.
Not that there's any comparison, but I think I'm taking on like the Undertaker role in the WWE for his last few years there, where every time he does something, it's impactful. It means something. He's a benefit to have in the locker room. He's a leader. He's very experienced. He can tell guys and girls what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. And it's just a good person to have around your roster. So, Jim, what are your thoughts on Chris Jericho?
Jesus Christ. So he says, not that there's any comparison, but I'll compare myself anyway. And then he says all good, true things about The Undertaker, but by inference, would that be the proper term? Inference? Hold on.
I think so.
Let me look that up. Hold on one second. Indisposed, indulge, inextinguishable, initiate. Wait a minute. FGHI. I've gone too far. Hold on. Infiltrate, infidelity, infidel, infest.
All those people that are always saying, I could listen to Jim Cornette read a dictionary.
Well, here you go.
Here you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Infer, to conclude from evidence, to lead to as a result or conclusion. Inference, the act or process of inferring. And basically, inference is the activity performed by a reader or interpreter in deriving conclusions that are not explicit in what is said. One way or another, he's compared himself to The Undertaker. He then says a bunch of nice things about The Undertaker that ipso fatso can be applied to him.
Oh, I'm going to remember that one.
It can be applied to himself as well. I think he's not, at the very least, showing a wide variety of humbleness and lovableness. He's not a humble and lovable shoeshine boy. He just said that, yeah, no, I got news for you. I have seen about 25 things, pretty easily 25 things that happened on AEW television that if The Undertaker had been in the locker room, he would have shut that shit down. And Jericho just stood by and let the parade go past. Ipso fatso, I don't compare Chris Jericho to The Undertaker.
Well, first of all, you raise an important question. We've seen GFY and The Influencer. Do you think Jericho's going to go after Ipso fatso next? May have to get Stephen P. New.
But again, how egregiously fucking egotistical can you be he did the obligatory, no, there's no comparison, then made all the comparisons that he thinks he's in that position that The Undertaker genuinely, truthfully was in as this authority figure that will fucking keep everybody straight. And obviously he ain't doing that job because nobody's keeping any of that shit straight. So, but it's nice that he considers himself in that same genre.
Yeah, that he thinks the things that he's doing are impactful.
Yes.
The problem is he wants to give people advice. As much as anyone actually wants to get his advice, he wants to give the advice.
And, and again, a couple of years ago, we said at least there's one guy there that's had experience at a major league level, that's done big time television, that has worked for a major company for so long. He can help these guys. He can break them of these bad habits. He can fucking try to teach them what the wrestling business is and not what they think it is with the fucking stunt show and the bullshit. And within 6 months, he's out on the football field with the kids. It's like the Uncle Dave principle. He doesn't have any principles, and whether they take his advice or not, he could give it in a legitimate way and try to teach them like JR did until they made fun of him and he just quit. But instead, he's, hello, fellow kids. I'm one of the cool kids. Look at me. I'm young because I'm out here fucking around on a football field. So it's not that he made them more professional. They made him less professional, and he went along with it just to be considered one of the fucking trendsetters, the influencer. GFY.
He was trying to hang on to them, not the other way around.
Oh, clinging for dear life. Clinched like grim death.
Let's get another question here, Jim. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Connor. From Connor in Connecticut. Hello, Jim and Brian. I'm a high school senior who has been a wrestling fan for about a decade now, and I've been a listener to the podcast for about a half a year or so. My question for Jim is this. With Keith Lee's arrival in AEW instantly cementing him as a monstrous force to be reckoned with, who should his first feud be against, and how would you book it?
Good Lord.
What do you do with Keith Lee? I guess that's an easier way to say how do you book his first feud, but what do you do with him now for the next 2 months?
Well, again, they're so anxious to rush things and to get people. I'm afraid to say that next week he's going to get jumped in the backstage area somewhere and have the garage door shut on his fucking head or whatever. He's just gotten there. I would give him, over the next 8 weeks, spread out 3 or 4 more matches like that. Find some low-level guys on the card that tell him what the fucking story is. This guy's an unstoppable monster. You're going to fly for him. You're going to get your comeback to the locker room. And in the weeks in between those matches, either have video highlights of the match that he just had or an interview with him where he just tells people his story, gets himself over. Whatever the introductory message is that they want for him, whether he wants to acknowledge that he's come to a place where he can finally bask in his own glory or whatever the story is, or he's had issues with, because they don't mind talking about COVID. He can say that he was sick and he was, taken away from people's television screens, and he has overcome that now, and he's the best shape he's ever been, and he wants to do whatever. He's here to make a difference, to win the championship. Well, just basic shit. Let us hear what he talks like, and let us see him win several matches. And then you can get him involved in something with somebody that's a step above who he's been just beaten, and draw that out where they get a little steam on him some way or another. They foil him in his path to something, or they fuck him around when there's something that he wants because they want the same thing. So naturally, there's got to be a collision course. As to who it would be, I've seen people on the internet say, well, they don't have that many guys as big as Keith Lee, or, well, they don't have any guys, but you know what I'm saying. They don't have any big guys or a lot of big guys, so his opponents are limited. That's exactly who you don't want to. You don't want to put Keith Lee against Powerhouse Hobbs, because then you've killed one guy's gimmick, because one of them is going to have to come out looking like the strongest guy, and then the other guy's weaker. And Keith Lee's too new for that, and Powerhouse Hobbs doesn't have enough behind him. Doesn't have enough push yet behind him. He hadn't been. We can't hardly ever even see him on television. So you want to put Keith Lee with a smaller heel, probably an experienced heel, that can bump and do the right things to get the guy over, but still he can, more importantly, do the right things when he's on offense, to not make Keith Lee look like a dipshit that's getting beat up by a guy half his size. He's experienced enough to do it in the right way. Without going down the roster individually, I don't know that a name pops up to be the perfect guy off the top of my tongue as the first person, and obviously it shouldn't be an MJF because he's involved in other things top of the card. But we're talking about a smaller heel, possibly maybe a smart-ass heel, or somebody with a smart-ass manager, get some use out of Hardy again somehow, unless he's still wandering through the crowd. or somebody with a tag team partner that can help interfere like they did, because what they did was perfect. Just more variety of that. Let Keith Lee show more of his repertoire, but with a guy that can also, when the time comes, cheat, get him down a little bit, get a little steam on him, whatever the case. And you do that for a little while and get him in something, and it's a gradual progression. That's what I'm insane over the fact that they seem to want, with every major signing that they have, they want to start the guy out in a main event, then work him into the middle of the card. And then I think, as you said a couple of weeks ago on one of the shows, after he's been there for a year and a half, he's having a lot of one fall 15-minute matches with job guys. It's complete opposite. Totally backwards. So, they just need to, Keith Lee doesn't need to be involved in a blood feud before he's said boo to anybody in the company. Don't jump him. Don't get heat on him. Don't fucking have anybody really get the upper hand, except occasionally physically in a match that he turns around and wins. And that's 3 months. Easily.
So while there are fans clamoring for Keith Lee and Powerhouse Hobbs, or I've seen Keith Lee and Miro.
Oh, Jesus.
You're not against it as a match, but you're against doing it anytime soon. Build to it for a while.
Yeah, I'm against showing the finish of the movie in the movie theater before we've established who the fucking hero is fucking in the first reel. Yes, down the road, Keith Lee and Miro might be maybe the most attractive thing, because you could, again, Miro is a fucking strong man. You could do some type of strength challenges with a guy like Miro. And if they put a match together where, they each took care of the other guy's aura and weren't just taking backdrops and monkey flips constantly, then you could work to that where that would draw money, because now both guys finally have a physical challenger. But they didn't start the Road Warriors off by putting them against the Powers of Pain. And as we've mentioned, the Road Warriors and the Powers of Pain are the Road Warriors and any other big team that was supposed to be as big and strong and powerful as they were. Those programs didn't draw, because people didn't come to see the Road Warriors get beat. They came to see the Road Warriors physically destroy the smaller heels that had heat. So you could do anything to put Keith Lee and Miro or another big, strong beast on a collision course, but it involves both of them getting wins with other people and being physically dominant and being, till finally the fans are saying, we need to see this match, because the two strongest guys or the two biggest, fucking beasts or whatever in all of AEW are these two guys. So now we need to see that. And then you have the match. That would be a long way down Keith Lee's fucking road for me right now.
All right, Jim, our next question, a somewhat off-topic question, I would assume, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Chris W. in Maryland. Jim, were you there the day the sewers exploded? Louisville, 1981. What's this?
You know what? Yes, I was, and I remember it now that he's mentioned it, and I'm trying to remember what the circumstances were. Does he go on?
He does not.
He does not. Okay, well, there was some type of, obviously, you can imagine a gas leak, a main ruptured, something happened downtown in Louisville, and the goddamn sewers blew up. Manhole covers for like a couple of block radius just blew straight up in the air, and flames shot out. And it was a cause of consternation and conversation in town for a day or two when that happened, when the fucking sewers blew up. And it was like one of those goddamn action movies. If they'd had cameras in the sewers back in those days, you'd have seen the fireball coming at you, right? And you're running on the CGI thing, trying to stay ahead of it. That's kind of like what it was. A lot of shit happened then. I can't remember what the exact cause was, but yes, I was here.
Well, let's get another off-topic question. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from JC in the swamps of Jersey. I recently heard where Jim answered a question regarding the Beatles. I've also heard Jim mention the Rolling Stones on numerous occasions. So, I'm just curious as to which band he prefers. Both are great, but personally, I'm a Stones man all the way. Jim, Beatles or Stones?
Okay, well, again, Stones. I'm not. I know there's going to be headlines somewhere. Cornette disrespects Beatles. No, they were revolutionary. Lennon and McCartney, still to this day, the most amazing songwriting catalog. The records they had, the Beatlemania, the British, they started the British invasion, the 5 top singles on the pop charts, blah, blah, blah. And I love the music, but the Rolling Stones, to me, are more of a rock and roll band in terms of flavor and presentation and etc. Whereas I've mentioned the Beatles were pop, and then of course they got cool the last couple of years and the Maharishi and all that stuff. But the Stones are a more nasty, raunchy rock and roll band. And honestly, I don't know. I might give Zeppelin the edge over the Stones just because of Robert Plant, with the amazing fucking vocals and the fact that they relied even more heavily on American blues to concoct their craft. And somebody got mad at me because I didn't give Pink Floyd any love. And I love Dark Side of the Moon, and you can't beat some Floyd classics, but other Floyds take a while to listen to, and you have to try hard. Let's put it that way.
Did you ever listen to any of the early stuff with Syd Barrett before David Gilmour joined the band?
I've tried, and like I said, it's slow developing in some cases.
Well, you know what may help? Acid.
That might help, especially as much as Syd Barrett did. As much acid as he did, I'm sure he'd like AEW.
Who's your favorite live band of all time?
Oh, God. I've honestly, in my life, I've been to numerous concerts, but not tons of concerts. Because honestly, for me, the experience of seeing the live music is sometimes overwhelmed by the experience of being in the middle of all the other live people. So most of the concerts I've enjoyed, I had an in, and like it was ZZ Top at the Coliseum in Memphis, and I was sitting on the equipment case on the side of the stage and not actually out there, right? The last live concert I went to, Stace wanted to see Journey and Heart at the Kentucky State Fair several years ago. And we leave to get there an hour and a half early, which we got to a mile and a half away from Freedom Hall an hour and a half early. And by the time we got caught in all the state fair traffic and the concert traffic and all the other bullshit, we got in, we'd missed half a Heart. And we had to walk 3 miles. And then I stood there, and it was so far away, I was looking at a big video screen where I could see the people that were on the stage in front of me that I couldn't see because I was too far back. And Journey was good because that little Filipino fella, he does a good job for being Steve Perry, but overall, and then we had to get in the car and fight the traffic again.
That's one of the reasons I never went to see the Stones. I got offered so many times in the last 25 years, 30 years, tickets to see the Stones. You're not anywhere near them. You're going to be watching them on a monitor while they're dots on a stage. It's just not worth it to me.
Well, and even if you're in the front row, you've still got the traffic in and the traffic out. And Stephen P. New wanted to take us to see the Stones a few years ago here in Louisville. It might have been canceled by COVID anyway, by the time that it came around. But I said, fuck, I don't want to be in the middle of that many people. So, I mean, I will watch one of the Eagles DVDs multiple times a month. I'll sometimes put one of the Eagles concerts on just while I'm filling orders or whatever, just to hear the music. But that's because it's in my living room on high def with surround sound. And
do you have a good sound system?
Well, I like it.
Is it just you got a sound system, or did you take time? Did you research it? Did you get the best record player you could find, or how is it set up over there?
No, goddammit, I've still got the same record player I had in 1988, which is probably a better record player than you could get today, come to think of it. But no, just down in the TV room, I've got the DVD player, I've got the receiver, I've got the TV and the cable box, and I got all 4 speakers and the subwoofer, the thing that that thing, and
yeah, I think,
and the one right there in the middle, and it just all comes at me. And you can turn it up and down. It's amazing.
So Beatles or Stones, you pick Stones.
I'm going with the Stones. And we haven't even talked about Skynyrd, man.
Because they're not from England.
That's true.
All right, well, let's get our next question here, Jim. And actually, a popular topic this morning as we are recording that many people have sent to us. I'm assuming you've seen this. I guess they filmed SmackDown for next week due to the Saudi Arabia trip. And Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair had a confrontation.
Well, since I didn't watch Friday night, they scuffled at the end of that show. I don't know whether it was that show or whether it's next, whatever the case, but
apparently it's next week's show. They taped it, but it's airing next week.
Well, there you go. So, again on Twitter, past the other stuff that we've already talked about, everybody was passing this clip around of they're doing a contract signing or some business that requires a table to be in the ring, and Charlotte's on one side of the table and Ronda Rousey's on the other side of the table. And as Charlotte stands up out of her chair, Ronda Rousey's already standing up and reaches out and grabs Charlotte by the head. And then what follows, it could possibly be the worst ever example in the history of professional wrestling of I'm going to run someone's head into something. And Ronda Rousey allegedly runs Charlotte's head into the table, and oh boy.
Whose fault was that?
Well, I've already explained it to a couple people on Twitter because everybody, well, that's just look at Charlotte. That's bullshit. She's just terrible. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but didn't we just talk about on the Experience the double head bonk spot when we were reading one of the agent reports?
Yeah, just a couple days ago. Yeah.
This was the live example of remember when I said if a motherfucker grabs you by the hair and jerks your hair back, or if he grabs you and tries to throw your head together, he don't know how to fucking work?
Yep.
Here was an example of it. The spot was obviously pre-set that Charlotte would stand up and Ronda Rousey would run her head in the table. However, apparently either Ronda Rousey just don't give a shit, or I can't believe nobody told her how to do it. And I don't know who the agents are anymore. Once again, where's Jack Lanza? Because Jack Lanza had a way of teaching people something without hurting their feelings, telling them first that they didn't know how to do it, right? So maybe one of the newer agents, one of the younger people, didn't want to hurt Ronda Rousey's feelings, like she wouldn't know how to fucking run somebody's head in the table, and didn't show her, just said run her head in the table and didn't show her. Charlotte, I don't know why that it's a live TV angle. When I have in the past worked and going to do something physical with people, even when they were people that knew what they were doing, I would go over it to make sure that I knew what they were going to do when, and or that I didn't fuck it up. But some way or another, I guess this was just on the honor system. Ronda run her head in the table. So Charlotte stands up, and Ronda Rousey reaches out with her left arm, and I don't know if she's left-handed or not, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway. And if anybody wants to watch this clip while I'm giving this description, go ahead. She reaches out with her left hand and grabs Charlotte on the top of the head by the hair, and then just jerks straight down. Like if you were trying to do this for a shoot, she had no leverage. She had no positioning to do this. Anybody would just, besides the uncomfortableness of having your hair pulled, you could just pull away from it. But she reaches out and grabs the hair and jerks down immediately. And Charlotte tries to go with it. But then when she jerked down, she let go. And Charlotte just kind of continued going toward the table, because when when somebody does something like that, you're not sure instantly what it looked like because you're concentrating on your shit. That's why this requires two people to do wrestling. It requires both guys or girls, whatever, to be on the same page. So she didn't have a fucking stance that made it look right to begin with. She reached out and grabbed her and just jerked her roughly. She didn't give her opponent time to get set to go. And then she let go, Ronda did, before she even followed through with it. So she would have had to have been as strong as Wonder Woman to just grab a grown adult by their head and jerk them for 6 inches. And that person's head is supposed to fly into the desk. And so Charlotte tried to boom and came back and staggered because by then she knew all this looked like shit. But again, it doesn't. Charlotte can redeem herself from that. Next time she gets in the ring and has a good match, nobody's going to remember that. Wise asses with clips on the internet. But subliminally even, after the Royal Rumble where Rousey was in the ring and left to fend for herself and she don't have enough experience and she looked like shit because it wasn't a routine that was planned out. She was having to vamp in there, as my old friend Bill Behrens used to say. Ad lib. Now they've seen this. It's something else that looks screwy that she's involved in. If they don't start monitoring her stuff and or walking through it or going through it or doing something to get it down a little bit better, and they keep leaving her to have these rookie mistakes where in some cases she looks like a fan trying to wrestle, it's not going to do any favors for Ronda Rousey. But that was Ronda Rousey's contribution, was why that was fucked up. It didn't have anything to do with Charlotte.
Am I wrong in thinking that, we just saw her return at the Rumble and now this, but with Ronda, there is a real law of diminishing returns that we may be seeing in live action?
Yes, but at the same time, she was around the first time for about a year. And they didn't necessarily get that particularly tired of her till toward the end, did they? She'd just been back for a week and a half. Because the first time, that WrestleMania match, she had a ton of goodwill with everybody, right?
Yeah.
She didn't come back and have a WrestleMania match. She came back and had a match where she looked worse than Shane McMahon in it. And they need to do something to reverse that trend.
Hey, let me ask you this too. We've seen, and I'm sure you've seen it too on social media, a lot of fans really get on Charlotte, and out of the ring issues are one thing, but in terms of who she is on that show, the star power, her abilities in the ring, do you think fans are too hard on Charlotte Flair?
Well, of course, because it's not all fans are hard on Charlotte Flair. Ward, you were a little hard on the Beaver last night. The fans that are hard on Charlotte Flair are the fans that think that either the frilly schoolgirls or their favorite girl wrestler that they like for some reason because she does a shooting star press or whatever are being held down because Charlotte Flair is an egotistical bitch and won't get out of the main events. That's what they think, that there is a subgenre of wrestling fans that likes and is immersed in and prefers girls wrestling. And they want the little cute girls that do all the fancy moves and do the flips. And they watch that, Stardom in Japan. And, Uncle Dave will report on the 5-star matches held by Uwe Watanabe, and nobody knows who these people are, or then there's the element of the fans that like the WWE girls on the bottom of the card because they're either pretty and they got a crush on them, or because they do the fancy moves. But the reason why that Charlotte is on top is because she looks and carries herself like a star. She overperforms athletically in a lot of her matches. She gets that she can talk to people and be a condescending ice queen bitch. And much in the same fashion as Becky Lynch is a great promo, and she got over with her personality in an opposite direction. That's why those and Sasha Banks, she's got a devoted audience, but the girls at the top are there because they can talk, and there's very few of them. They can talk and they can work and they get over with people emotionally rather than just, oh, look at those girls doing those gymnastics. And that's what a certain section of the fans can't stand about Charlotte. She's a better worker than the trampoline girls that they're fans of.
Well, obviously, it takes a lot to be a top women's star in wrestling. And, it takes a lot of balls, I think, to really make yourself a top star and keep yourself there. And I would think that if you have the balls to be a top star, you may want to shave them. And how's that for a transition?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not sure that Charlotte or any of the other people we talked about are going to be using the ball-shaving Manscaped products, but nevertheless, our friends at Manscaped, folks, I'll tell you what, they've got a new product out, a new package. If you've needed a new package for your package, they got the package. I want to read an email first, though, because I got this email from John to both of us, Brian, you and I. And he was praising the Manscaped products. He said, after much more consideration than should have been needed, I brought up Manscaped to my wife, who proceeded to gift it to me for Christmas. Obviously, since this was done beyond my knowledge, I couldn't tell you the package she had purchased, but it included the Weed Whacker, the Crop Preserver, the Crop Reviver, and the coup de grace, the vaunted Lawnmower 4.0. And that, of course, is the perfect package that they purchased. Without further ado, allow me to give you an honest man's review of these products. The Lawnmower 4.0, what a machine! What a miracle of modern science and innovation. The onboard LED light allowed me to fully explore my parts unknown in order to fully groom my Ultimate Warrior. And it shaved so smoothly, I was amazed. There were some accidental nicks to be had, but they were due to sudden movements which went against the manufacturer's instructions for safe usage. Once my mission was concluded, I used the included Crop Reviver. Wow, what a feeling! No, seriously, what a feeling! Dr. Evil was right. There is nothing quite like a shorn scrotum. As for the wife, she was eager to experience that which Manscaped had laid out for her, which, well, let me simply put it this way. Manscaped had her sprinting down the aisle and shaking the ropes. Brian, viewer testimonials.
Using the Ultimate Warrior as their example.
And there you go. And folks, you can feel the same way, because now that perfect package has a companion. If you know that the lawnmower and all those other things are essential, guess what is now in the Ultra Premium collection from Manscaped? Folks, you're going to get Manscaped Premium Deodorant. Not for your balls, for your stinky armpits. Brand new deodorant. A hydrating body moisturizer. If you have issues with dry skin, or as we mentioned earlier in the program, a dry penis. Or if you've got tattoos, you got to keep them moist. Also the body wash, so you can lather up with infused aloe vera and sea salt shower gel. Shampoo and conditioner, 2-in-1, plus a free gift, a 3-pack of lip balm that's made up of vitamin E, peppermint, eucalyptus oil, so you can blow somebody on Broadway and not get chapped lips. Uncle Dave, are you listening? That is 4 products and a free gift inside the Ultra Premium collection. Of course, all the products cruelty-free, paraben-free, vegan-friendly, dye-free. They're not money-free. You got to pay for them. But we can save you some money. You want to get the Ultra Premium collection hot off the shelves? You can get 20% off and free shipping with the code DRIVE, D-R-I-V-E, at manscaped.com. 20% off, free shipping. The code word is DRIVE. Well, first you knock 3 times. They'll knock back twice. Actually, that's 3. Then you say, DRIVE.
It's not exactly how it works, but try that.
3 knocks, and then you knock back 2. 2. Then there's a thump on the door. Then you give an elbow right there, and then they'll say, hooty hoot, hooty hoot. And then you say, drive. You get 20% off.
What is it, Master P? Who's behind that door? Hooty hoo.
Hooty hoo, hooty hoo.
Well, let's move on with the show, Jim. Our next question, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com, is from Eric Hodgkiss. Apparently that's his real name, out of Toledo, Ohio.
I wonder if he's related in any way. Possibly by marriage. That's why that Hotchkiss, I understand, is a family name.
What are Jim's thoughts on cheap heat? When is it acceptable, if ever? Does he have any past experience where someone tried pitching a line in a promo to him that was kind of cheap? Or has someone ever went off script and said shit he or any writer wouldn't have been okay with?
Well,
I went all over the place.
Yeah, well, okay, well, but it's not Hotchkiss's fault there, because the fans have heard these descriptions and definitions of different wrestling terms. Cheap heat didn't have one particular definition. To a lot of the old-time promoters especially, cheap heat could be if you just looked at the people and yelled at them and told them to shut up. Oh, that's cheap heat. You know, get your heat in the ring with your match. Cheap heat can be referred to when somebody does an unsavory line in a promo. Any of Max Caster's raps could probably be accused by somebody in the wrestling business over the last 50 years as being cheap heat, because that's, in that usage of the term, it's like, well, you're going to an off color. You're working blue if you're a comedian back in the old nightclub days. You're saying something off color that, of course, is going to get a rise if anybody says it. The idea that cheap heat is something that you just do to get a response that anybody could do and get a response. If you drop your pants and shit on the guy in the front row, people are going to be up in arms about it, but that would be anybody. It didn't have to be you doing it, right? The idea was you were getting real legitimate heat, masterful heat, if it's something that you did that wasn't in any way off color or immoral, illegal, something that's not accepted in polite society, but they're mad about it because you did it, right? Is that Brian, you know what I'm trying to say. Is that said it at all?
Yeah, I mean, one example I'll use that I've thought recently we've seen too much of is the attacking people for their local teams not doing well in sports.
Yeah, that's cheap heat.
And there's been so much of it that it stands out to me lately.
Yes. And I mean, and honestly, I've done that because it's not like that. It's everybody that's been in the wrestling business, even people who say, oh, that's cheap heat, at one time or another have got cheap heat. Yes, if I'm at a fucking, like that time I've referred to at the Indians game, because especially the people that were just there to see baseball aren't used to hearing shit like that. They were fucking pissed, right? But if you're at the baseball game, at the wrestling event after the baseball game, yeah, and you're a heel, knock the fucking baseball team. It's still cheap heat, but you're not out there. Cheap heat could also be just an endless stream of profanity. Or cheap heat can be, two guys that can't have a fucking match just decide to go out and fucking garbage it up and double juice and every, bullshit thing in the world. Like deathmatch wrestling is, by the nature of it, cheap heat. The worst kind of cheap heat. And I'm not making that up because I don't like deathmatch wrestling. Deathmatch wrestling, by the definition of cheap heat, in some usages, consists of cheap heat. But everybody's going to do it to some degree, but the idea is when you just rely on that, and that's all there is, and that's all you can do, that's when it's bad, and that's when it gets bad for business. And that's, again, all the promoters, some were straighter than the others. Sam Muchnick wouldn't allow any of the wrestlers to get on the microphone. That was only for the ring announcer, unless a main event guy was announcing that his opponent wasn't going to be there or something like that. Whereas in other places, you got on a microphone to further what you were doing. And nobody thought anything about it. Most of the time you had to ask first. You had to be told to get on the microphone. I understand now that's a thing from the old days. Now guys at shows can just get on the microphone if they want.
Now they walk out with their own microphone.
Yeah, now they come out with their own. He asked, did somebody ever pitch me anything I thought was cheap heat? No, nobody ever pitched me a fucking line for a promo that Dusty Rhodes or Bill Dundee or whoever the booker was would sometimes outright tell me things to say in the promo in terms of the match or the stipulation or whatever, but none of that would have been contained in cheap heat. Any smart-ass remark, off-color remark, or anything I came up with was on the sperm of the moment, and I did it myself. Early in my career, and some people have seen this, it was on Memphis TV, and it was on the Rookie Year DVD I did quite a while back, but when Steve O was in the Memphis territory, Steve Olszanowski, I was managing the Galaxians, Danny Davis and Ken Wayne, and Danny hurt his back, and so Ken's a single, and Lawler was the booker at the time, and as everybody knows, I don't think this is breaking any new ground, Jerry Lawler is the biggest stand-up comic, one-liner, insult comic fan in the world, and he's got the joke books, and he's got the compendiums, and he made a holy pilgrimage to Dangerfield's Club in New York that time. And so he tells me, blister Steve-O with a bunch of Polish jokes, right? So yeah, that's cheap heat. But I've, since he's telling me to do this, it's like a 2-week program. We did it a couple weeks on TV. After the first week, because I know, okay, the booker loves fucking insult jokes, loves fucking all kinds of one-liners. He's telling me to do it. I'm gonna fucking excel, right? I'm gonna get some more fucking Memphis TV time. So I went to the next week when I was up here in Louisville, before the next week's TV, I went to Caulfield's Novelties down close to the Louisville Gardens, and I got all this stupid shit. I got like a little plastic boat that had 100 bare feet coming out from the bottom of it. It was my 100-foot yacht. And I had the fucking gun with the barrel that pointed backwards, so if you pulled the trigger, you'd shoot yourself, and all this other goofy-looking shit. And I did a 5-minute routine of Polish jokes and how stupid Steve-O was on Memphis TV. Didn't sell a goddamn ticket. It was fucking rotten, but Lawler loved it because it was bad jokes. So that was cheap heat that I was pitched. That was early on. But no, that's the thing. It fits the occasion. If you're at a spot show, couple of hundred people, a lot of kids in the audience, and you want to walk and talk instead of taking bumps, and you keep the people occupied and into the thing that way, as long as you're not cussing or say anything that the promoter would get you kicked out of the building or the kids would be upset about or whatever, it may be cheap heat to get on the microphone, but it's not necessarily the worst thing that ever happened. There's a lot more worse things going on in the wrestling business these days.
Well, Jim, our next question sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Ron in February 1988.
Ron in February?
In February 1988.
What state is February in?
Well, he doesn't have a last name or a state of residence listed here. But in February 1988, when beautiful Bobby fought Dusty for the title in Mid-Atlantic for JCP, and you took the elbow outside the ring, why is the crowd 20 feet from the ring? What's the story behind this? The crowd was hot. Lost revenue? Question mark. One last thing, has Jim ever eaten at the Bellevue Bistro in Northern Kentucky?
Last question first. No, I have not. I have not eaten at the Bellevue Bistro. But if they will send me some of their beast in the, shipped in the mail, I'll be glad to try it here at the house. Somebody just tweeted the finish of this. So that's why I remember where it was. It was in Greensboro. And the front row in Greensboro at the Coliseum was way back. And it was like that when we first started going. And I have to assume that it was like that because of the same reason why the front row at the New Orleans Downtown Municipal Auditorium was so far back, because in previous years they had issues. And especially since the Greensboro Coliseum was so big, seats 16,000 people, we did sell out on a few occasions, but the front row was, God, well, you remember the first Clash of Champions, the match with the Midnight and the Fantastics, and the guys in the front row, section D, are holding the Cornette sign, right?
John Hitchcock, yeah.
Yeah. They're 20 feet back. Some towns, and generally it would, and I'm not saying this with Greensboro because I never asked. I was just glad to see it. Because in Charlotte, right down the road at the Coliseum, they were on us, right? The front row was 10 feet from the ring, and we had that shitty little rail. So I loved places like New Orleans and Greensboro where you had some room. But it generally happened as a result of a lawsuit that the building was involved in. These things, I've known that to happen in several other places where, they moved the seats back because they had too much trouble with the fans jumping in the ring. They had a big lawsuit. There was a issue, and the building said, okay, if we're going to have wrestling, we're going to do this. The lawsuit is not the reason why, but just the fan interaction is the reason why Puerto Rico didn't have ringside seats at all. And if you ever go back, in a lot of cases, sometimes they did, but if you go back and look at stadium shows, big arena shows in Puerto Rico, at least in the 70s and 80s, in a lot of cases, they didn't have anybody on the floor or the field because it was too dangerous. So that was with Greensboro, that's where you see that big area around ringside, and we had plenty of room to move around and do shit. It's not any more complicated than that.
All right, Jim, let's get a few Vince McMahon questions on the show this week. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Jen in Dublin, Georgia. Nobody bats 1,000 every time, but it seems that Vince can somehow see who will be good or even great before anyone else does. And even before it seems like he would be able to see it. We may have to wait a few years before we see what he sees, like with Roman Reigns, but we usually do see it. On the flip side, he also seems to know who won't make it, even if it seems like they will. For example, when guys get released or not re-signed and go on to other companies, we often end up seeing why they were let go, even if we couldn't before. They have bad attitudes or big egos, and they just don't ever get past a certain point. How does Vince evaluate talent? Does he see things in guys? Is it something that can be quantified? Does he just go with his gut? What can you tell us about how this works?
Well, as far as what he sees in talent that he likes is a lot of the things that we talk about here on the program that I look for, that other people look for, which is, that's it. I mean, it wasn't a stretch to predict that Rocky Maivia was going to be the guy. I was not the only one saying it. Other people were saying it also. That's why he got signed, and that's why he started getting fast-tracked, which almost worked against him. You look for size, you look for look, personality, the way they adapt to the ring and their performance in it. None of these things is the only measuring stick. You've got to have something of everything. Attitude, progression. Everybody starts green and or the shits, although Rocky didn't. Most everybody does, but how fast do they progress, or do they progress at all? Do they get mentally what the business is supposed to be about? And That evaluation will vary depending on the evaluator and the era. I don't think anybody anymore gets what this business is truly supposed to be about, but you're grading on a curve. A part of it with Vince, the incredible track record, part of it is the guy that owns the company has the ability somewhat to make these things a self-fulfilling prophecy, because he's the one who controls who gets pushed. So he's looking for the same thing that any other veteran in the wrestling business is looking for. He sees it maybe in different people, or sometimes different people, than some of the other experts would see it. But if he sees that, then he's going to try to exploit that and evaluate it and promote it and push the guy to get him over. Now, if he's picked the right things about the guy to push, it will work. If he doesn't, or like with Roman Reigns, Vince could see, as anybody could see, this guy was going to be the star of that group because of his look and his personality. And then you work with him and you know whether he's got determination, drive, or whatever. These are things that are not immediately apparent to the fans because they're not working with the guy backstage and regularly and on the road or at TV and seeing what effort he's putting in, what his determination is, what his attitude is about learning things or about doing things or whatever. That's why that it's not immediately apparent until they go somewhere else, because you're not working with the guy. The fans aren't. You're not privy to his attitude until, later on. But so that's the thing. Part of it is Vince had a lot of experience in wrestling before he became the guy because of his father and working in his father's company and seeing big stars and seeing how they developed. And he has an eye for talent, or at least he used to. I don't know whether I'm saying anything now that applies to modern day Vince McMahon, 70-something years old, but the one I knew, and he was right more often than not about top talent, because to get over with Vince, you had to have a lot of those things going for you to begin with. He wasn't easy to please. There were guys that I thought their working ability and their personality should overcome the size deficit, or the promo ability should overcome something else or whatever. But no, he even has a higher standard to himself. And if he sees a guy that he thinks can be a star and can figure out a way that he thinks he can make him a star, he'll go with that. And then, nobody could have predicted Ahmed Johnson until he actually got there and started having matches with the best talent in the world and started working with the best agents in the world. He looked like a great prospect. Watts loved him. JR loved him. Vince, everybody loved him because of the way he looked. And you thought he could get over. Then you found out that mentally he's an idiot and he's injury prone and he's unreliable and he's all the other things that you have to be around somebody and you have to give it a try before you figure that out.
In the time you were there, did you see any differences in the way Vince evaluated talent from, let's say, 95 to 98?
No, in that short period of time, no, not necessarily. He didn't make any changes in terms of what talent he thought, should be on top of the card. He might have changed the way that he pushed them to get there. But at the same time, like I said, I'm not saying that he was flawless with picking in other words, everybody that he picked to be a star didn't become a star. I mentioned one, Ahmed. And everybody that he didn't pick to be a star, some of them went other places and became a star. So he's not flawless. Part of it has to do with he has the ability, once he decides somebody's going to be a star, to push them to that level. Then they got to do the rest. But, he didn't really have any magic formula for, he just knew, not only when he'd see a guy, he knew what he could do with him. And all great bookers. That's why sometimes you'll see, going back in history, an anomaly, a guy that got over for some reason in one territory because of the way he was used, because the booker had confidence in him. They came up with the right gimmick for the right place, the right time. Never got over anywhere else. Nobody ever tried to even get him over. You'll see that if you go through the history of wrestling. That's because sometimes it just right place, right time, right guy, and right push. You never predict those things, but you can always, when you see a Kurt Angle, a Dwayne Johnson, going back years, a Jack Briscoe, you know they're going to be a star. It's just a question of how big.
Jim, our next question sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Steve in Jersey. Do you think Vince McMahon actually loves anyone, or does he just see other people, including family, as sources of capital gain?
I think that's a little heartless. Vince, I don't know if I've never seen Vince fucking just down on the floor rubbing a puppy's belly or cuckooing a little baby grandkid or whatever. I assume he's done both those things in his life. I wasn't around him when he had his grandkids and they were accessible. But no, I believe he loves his family members. They possibly try his patience on some occasions. Of course, he doesn't have a large extended family, so, all the love can be concentrated on a few individuals. But no, part of it, I think maybe even replacing sentiment and compassion and love is that Vince respects his father greatly and the idea of family and supporting family and family sticks together and that type of thing. So maybe even that might overcome, even if he wasn't fond of all the members of his family, he would think, well, my dad would want me to be. So
hey, you always hear conflicting reports about what Vince McMahon Sr. knew and what he didn't know about what Vince Jr. was going to try to do. And it wasn't until after Vince Sr. passed that Vince Jr. started saying, "Don't call me Junior, I'm not a junior." Never said that when his dad was alive. From your conversations, from the time that you spent around Vince, how did he talk about his dad?
I don't ever remember Vince criticizing anything that his dad ever did. Vince was not a person to just go off and wax nostalgic about things and go into the story, right? But Vince, when he would refer to his dad, it would be things, rules of thumb from his dad, like as goes the garden, goes the business, those type of things, or a method that his dad would have used to, stretch out a title program, or, he would have gave so-and-so 3 shots at Bruno or whatever. It would always be in a very, respectful and reverential tone, but not, tons of details about, boy, I remember when my dad said this to me. He's not that kind of guy.
All right. What kind of guy is he?
Yeah. Okay. And I'll slap him right out of his chair. No. But that, Vince is the furthest thing from sentimental, but at the same time, he can get the mist in his eye every now and then. But so I don't think he's as bad as the questioner made it out to be.
Our next question, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Iran. Jim.
Now, wait, is this the country or the person?
Oh, it's Arran.
Oh, I thought it was from Iran.
No, Iran, I think. But here's Iran, I think's question.
I ran so far away. Couldn't get away.
Jim being there at the beginning of Orton's career in OVW, could you foresee the success he has had? Being a 14-time WWE champion and youngest ever champion is a spectacular achievement. However, even with an amazing look and athletic ability, his lack of personality on camera and mic skills somewhat split fans. A lot see him as a Ken doll who was fortunate
Now, wait a minute. Is he saying... What did he... Was that when he was a rookie in his rookie year? Or is he saying that Orton can't do a promo? And what else did he say? Is he applying that to now?
Well, let me go back. I'll read it again. Again, he's referring to the fact you've been there since the beginning of Orton's career. But I think this is about his entire career. However, even with an amazing look and athletic ability, his lack of personality on camera and mic skills somewhat split fans. A lot see him as a Ken doll who was fortunate to come along in the era where most of the talented wrestlers were not big guys. And therefore, he got ahead of the pack with his look and size only. If Orton was around in the 80s or 90s, I think he would have been a mid-carder at best.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
A lot to tackle here from Iran.
First of all, he got over just because of his size, because a bunch of the guys weren't that big then. He was in the same class with Batista and Lesnar.
And Cena.
Cena was bigger then than he is now, but point is, Jesus Christ, Randy Orton, lack of personality. Randy Orton can't cut a promo. What the fuck? I don't understand where this... I think back to what Paul Heyman said, wasn't even 10 years ago. It was more recent than that. If you're going to start a wrestling program or wrestling promotion, pick the 5 guys that you want to start on the roster. And he said, Randy Orton, Randy Orton, Randy Orton, Randy Orton, and Randy Orton. He wouldn't say the same thing now because Randy's 10 years older and doesn't want to do this for that much longer, I don't think. But otherwise, no, we knew, again, that Randy was going to be some level of a star, except we weren't convinced of it like I was with Cena, like I was with Rock, like I was with a few other people, because Randy's attitude and determination was still in question. That was the only question. As far as he's what, 6'2", 6'3". He had the height. When he was in OVW, he was not as dedicated to his training. He was only 19 years old, but he had a little flab around the middle, had just a couple of the tattoos, the ones that looked crummy. He wasn't tanning. And to be quite honest, well, I've told this story, and I still have the VHS tape. They were doing training class at the old Davis Arena in Jeffersonville, the old place, and Randy and somebody else were sitting at the announce desk, and they were watching one of the training matches. And again, he's 19 years old. He's gotten a contract for $750 a week as a developmental, because he's Bob Orton Jr.'s son and Bob Orton Sr.'s grandson, to learn to wrestle. And he's not that particularly dedicated to it yet. So Danny Davis is running the tape on the training session, but when he flipped everything on, the microphones are on too. And Danny's sitting back in the office listening to Orton talk to whoever he's sitting with. And he said, yeah, I don't give a shit about wrestling. I just want to show up and get my $750 a week. I hate wrestling. So after it was over with, Danny called me. I don't even think he called him in that day. I think he called me. He said, listen to this. He told me about it. Then we called him in and said, dumb shit, even if that's the way you feel, don't be doing an open mic night about it. And you have an opportunity here. You, because of your, not only your family lineage, but also just because of your genetics, you're probably going to have a chance to make good money in this business. Don't fuck it up. Straighten your attitude out. He wasn't in as good physical shape then, as obviously as he would get later on, but he started taking things more seriously. He didn't get selling naturally. He dish-ragged a bit, and he sold with his head down, and the facial expressions weren't there, but he was good on offense, especially with that big standing drop kick, and different that you could see that if, as he got older, grew up, got in better shape, dedicated himself more, he had all the tools and could get it. And finally he did. And
did you think he was going to come along better as a babyface or as a heel?
Just because he's a 19-year-old kid, I saw him as a babyface, and that's the way we used him because, he didn't have an over-the-top personality then. And he was very young, and he was the son of a wrestling legend. And he didn't really know how to lead a match or put a match together at that point. So why are you going to try to make that guy heel? Make him a babyface and let him get comfortable and let him do this a bunch and let him do a variety of angles and things. And then when he's a little bit older and in a little bit better shape, then he can start getting a bad attitude on camera instead of behind the scenes. And that's kind of the way that it went. But no, again, you could see it. He wasn't an all-around package like Kurt Angle or like The Rock, which they had pretty much. Kurt's personality and his promos didn't come immediately, but they came fairly quickly. But at the same time, you could see there was a bunch of positives there, and you just needed to try to let them come out over time. But if he hadn't have gotten dedicated to the business, we wouldn't be talking about him now. And he has made 7 figures per year on a variety of years in that job since he's been there, because what I just referred to happened in 22 years ago.
Well, at that point, Jim, a lot of people were predicting the future for Randy Orton. A lot of people like yourself or Danny Davis saw his future, but he couldn't see his future clearly.
He couldn't see it because of poor visibility. Folks, I'm telling you what, you can't run your life. You can't run a business. You can't run a massage parlor. You can't run anything if you've got poor visibility, because you're still relying on spreadsheets and outdated financial software. That's the easiest way to just be in the weeds, because to see the full picture, you need to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. Now, I know that a lot of these things that I'm about to say may surprise you, Brian Last, but however, NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth. With all other financial systems, they're here on the ground. NetSuite's financial system is way up in the clouds where they can look down on everybody, look down their noses at them because they're the best. With visibility and control of your financials, inventory, HR, planning, budgeting, and more, NetSuite is everything you need to grow all in one place. If you give NetSuite control of everything, they'll run off with it and they'll make you $1 million forever. You give them control of your financials.
Don't guarantee that. Don't guarantee that. We can't guarantee that.
I'm telling you, you sign all of your financials over to NetSuite. You sign all of your inventory over to NetSuite, and they'll take it and they'll make a fortune with it.
This isn't how it works. There's no power of attorney. There's no transfer like this.
Oh, so NetSuite gives you control of your financials, inventory, HR, planning, budgeting, and more. I thought they were taking control of it for you. They give you control of all those things.
Well, I'm glad we got that cleared up.
Never mind. With NetSuite, you can automate your processes and close your books in no time. I closed my book last night. I'd actually finished my pizza and I was going to read for a minute before I went to sleep, but I was so daggum sleepy when I got full that I closed that book, set it aside. But you can automate your processes and close your books in no time while staying well ahead of your competition. And what are they competition at? I don't know. Whatever your business is, you probably got competition. You're going to stay ahead of them. 93% of surveyed businesses increased their visibility and control after upgrading to NetSuite. 5% were sentenced to federal prison.
No.
2% are still awaiting indictment.
No. There are no 5 and 2%.
No, there's not. Well, that would be 7. 93 plus 7. But 93% of surveyed businesses increased their visibility and control after upgrading to what it is that NetSuite does for you. Folks, over 28,000 businesses already use NetSuite for a variety of things. You don't know what you can use this stuff for. I tell you, it's got multiple uses. For the new year, NetSuite has a new financing program for those ready to upgrade at netsuite.com/JCE. That is NETSUITE.com. NetSuite. Head to netsuite.com/JCE for this special one-of-a-kind financing offer on the #1 financial system for growing businesses, netsuite.com/JCE. They will give you a one-of-a-kind offer on how much money they want, and you better take it. And then they will tell you what they're going to give you for it, and you better like it. netsuite.com/JCE.
All right, well, let's get a few more questions here, Jim. This next one will not be read on the show. Let me go to this other one over here.
Wait, can you read it to me and whisper it in my ear?
Well, hold on. It just happened to be the question that the cursor, the mouse was on, so I'll read this one. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Hank in
Hank next door?
Statford, Ontario.
That shits on my driveway?
Statford, Ontario.
Well, you can shit on all the driveways in Ontario you want to. I don't care.
Hey, this isn't a bad email after all. Jim, have you ever had stage fright and froze while at or in the ring during a match or cutting a promo?
Oh, no. Well, that sounds kind of obnoxious. No, of course not.
You never had stage fright?
Well, I didn't say that. But I was scared shitless on my first appearance on Memphis television, and you've seen it. I've tried to burn all the existing copies.
The one with you and Fargo?
Well, no, that one, I don't consider that. I was just there to further along their issue. I was just a goof standing there giving him a plaque.
Yeah, for Wrestler of the Decade in 1981.
No, see, it was the previous decade. It was the previous decade. See, that's the thing, is we just got caught up to counting all the votes. Took about a year. But no, I'm talking about my first time is when I wanted to become a manager, and I announced that fact with Lance. It was only on the Memphis show. It was just in the dark on the 90-minute Memphis show. They ran out of time, thank God, or it would have been on the tape that went around everywhere. But I got to get the first one out of the way. I was a stick standing there. I didn't know. When I got out there, I knew what I was supposed to say, but I didn't know how I was supposed to say it. And then I saw the camera and the studio audience, and everybody's looking at me, and they're, what the fuck's he out here for? And I had no good answer for him. And so Lance led me through it by the nose, but it was pretty bad, right? But by the next week, I realized, okay, I've done it now, and now I know what was wrong with it. And I need to perk some of these things up. And the next week was on the whole tape and blah, blah, blah. Yes, I've been nervous on a variety of things, especially if it was something that was, I don't want to say outside my comfort zone, but something I had not done before and was not particularly convinced that I was going to do it right. I had 3 days to think about that bump off the scaffold. And of the two worst things that could go wrong in my mind, number two did. Number one was I was going to get number two was I was going to get hurt, and that's what happened. Number one was I was going to fuck it up some kind of way and make the goddamn match bullshit, and at least that didn't happen. But I don't mean to sound egotistical, but on promos, I've never frozen up past that first day when I didn't really freeze up. I said shit. It just wasn't very good. I can't remember another time on anything. I've been on MTV. I've been on the local news. I've been on TBS. I've been on pay-per-view. They may not have all been the greatest promos ever, but I've never frozen up.
Were there any wrestlers you could think of that did have a reputation for getting stage fright?
Well, not necessarily. We never phrased it as stage fright. It was just freezing up, not being able to cut a promo, not knowing what the, not knowing, but not being able to cut a promo or how to get out of something. I mean, you can go back and look at the history of wrestling television. There's been a bunch of those. And a lot of the guys that came to be known as people who just couldn't cut promos didn't get a lot of chances to cut promos, or they got a manager. The guys used to sell out the curtain at the TV studio if Bobby Eaton had to talk. And none of them wished him ill over it, and nobody was going to make fun of him. But it was always something funny because they knew he didn't want to do it. They knew he knew that was the weak point in his game, and he wasn't comfortable with it. And when he was on, Dennis Condor was still making fun of this 5 years after the fact. When they worked for Goulas and Bobby was working the fucking angle with Savage, they'd injured no, it was the heel. The heel had had an injury to his wrist or whatever. And so they made it part of the deal with using the cast, right? And Bobby was supposed to come out and say, well, last week, Savage or whoever it was beat me, used that cast. He had his wrist all taped up and everything. He said, as soon as he came out and I saw him, he had his arm taped up from the wrist to the ankle. Exactly. And Dennis would get on him. But anyway, no, as far as me, anything that I've ever had, and again, I don't say stage fright, because when I would go out, if it was a big building, when I was in the Superdome, I didn't have my glasses on. I couldn't see past the fourth row. I knew there were people there. I could hear them, but that was a big, dark place. Even in the buildings where it's lit up, and I was never nervous about talking in front of those people. Every once in a while, when it was something I had to do physically that I was afraid, oh, I'm going to look like an idiot or I'm going to make this look fake, that's when I would be nervous, potentially shaking like a dog shitting peach seeds. You could shove a lump of coal up my ass, come out with a 10-carat diamond, all the other similes. But I didn't show it to anybody. Oh my God, I was fucking, to myself, scared shitless the day that we did the angle with Paul Lee in the original Midnight in the studio, where he was going to clock me with the phone. I was going to get the juice.
That was the first time you got juice?
Well, on purpose it was. There'd been some inadvertent incidents previously, but also the reason why I was nervous about it was because it's my angle that I've pitched to Dusty. I have asked him to let me do this, and it's going to be on television on TBS, and Paulie and the original Midnight are dependent on this, because this is going to kick off not only our angle with them, but their angle that's going to get them over. And if I drop this fucking blade, or if somebody sees me using it or whatever, and I expose or it looks bad on television. So I was very nervous about that. But in the end, the only mistake was I neglected to realize that I could have waited 5 seconds and would have bled from the first one. It was so cold in the studio. I've told the story. I went to the well a few more times without waiting, and then almost got us kicked off television because I bled so much. But
how nervous do you think Paul was?
That's the thing with Paul in those days. And when we were working in the six mans, or whenever he had to do something physical, Paul was the same way as I was. He was pretty confident he could go out and cut a promo. Right. So he wasn't going to get nervous about that. I mean, I can't put myself in his shoes as how much preparation he went into, or he was always wired up. And I don't mean drug wise. I mean, he was always, he just tightly strung, as Mama Cornette used to say, even more than me. But he seemed to be most reticent to do stuff, that physical stuff, and most nervous. I've said I grabbed him one time around the neck to punch him, and I swear to God, it was like grabbing a table leg. Every muscle in his body was as tense as possible, and he would freeze there, and you'd see the look in his eye like, I'm trying not to move so you can punch me, and then he'd fly away. And he never got the physical part. And I'm not, goddamn Frank Gotch saying this. Oh, he wasn't as physical as I was. I was a better bumper, and I was a better worker than Paul Heyman. This is not a controversial statement. Because part of it was I asked the guys more. I paid more attention. I wanted to do that. I don't think Paulie ever wanted to do the physical part. And also, for whatever reason, some people just don't get it. And so I think that Paul was more nervous when he had to do physical shit. Not that it would look bad, because he seemed to like all of the shit that he did, even if it looked a little questionable. But he was scared, honestly, of getting potatoed.
And remember, all the managers he watched growing up never took bumps.
Well, that was the benefit that I had that he didn't have, is that he grew up in New York watching WWF managers, and I grew up in the South watching the Southern managers, and the Southern managers were always involved, were always doing shit, had a million stock manager spots at ringside that you could call on, and those guys up there walked the guys to the ring, went back in the garden and did TV interviews. So he had the interviews down, but he had never put himself in a position of having to do anything physical. And then, you know, until he, when he first broke in, you know, just doing a couple of independent spots, he wasn't taking bumps, and they didn't use the managers for a ton in the AWA. He'd been to Florida briefly, but he really hadn't been anywhere where he was getting a lot of experience. With my fucking second week in the goddamn business, I'm taking bumps, and I was having manager matches against Jimmy Hart when I'd been in the business 3 months. So at least they started me early, and I got it worked out and out of the way.
This next question was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Rick in the AWA country of Minnesota. Here is a topic I have not heard discussed in the thousands of hours I have listened to your shows. A while back, I heard that Matt Riddle had received some flack because he did not introduce himself to the other wrestlers when he moved up to the main roster. Which makes me wonder about the etiquette of introductions. If you are a new wrestler to a roster, how do you introduce yourself to the other boys? Do you use your real name or your gimmick name? Do you just walk up to a top-level guy like The Undertaker or Roman Reigns and introduce yourself? Or do you keep your distance from those top-tier guys? How do you refer to the other wrestlers? By their real name or gimmick name? Hello, Kevin Owens, my name is Axe Erickson. Or, hello, Mr. Steen, my name is Rick Evans. I will be wrestling as Axe Erickson.
Oh, boy.
So, is it the proper thing to try and meet everyone? Or don't the other wrestlers even care who you are?
This is so much horse shit. I don't even know where to start. And again, in today's wrestling environment, they have concocted these traditions and rites that they go through, and they've made up the traditions. As I said, remember somebody sent us the clip where Cody was saying, well, it's a tradition in wrestling. If a guy's going to win a belt, you put the bag the belt goes in his bag in the locker room. That's a fucking hell. And then I've illustrated that 20 years ago, we didn't even have belts or bags that the belt went in, much less have that tradition. The handshake thing, as I've said so many times, has gotten completely out of control. And I can say, first of all, I don't know what they do now. I think now they do call the guys, they call each other by their real names. Because this was going, the Motor City Machine Machine Guns, Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley, when they were in TNA, this was like 2007 or whatever. They called each other by their real name. We were having a finish meeting with a tag team and them and a referee, and they're calling each other by their real name. I don't know who the fuck they're talking about. And finally I had to ask myself, who are you talking about? Well, he's so-and-so. And I said, well, he's Chris and he's Alex from now on. Get used to it. Because nobody, the guys, unless you were best friends with somebody in and out of the business, you didn't call a guy by his real name in the days of the territories, because that led you into a bad habit. That's why I saw an interview. This was 15 years ago. Some of those, the divas they had in the WWE, I think one of them was that Kelly. They were calling each other by their real names on a television interview and then laughing about it. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot your name is so-and-so. It's just, you don't get in the habit of calling somebody by their real name, because then you'll slip and do it in front of people. And in a lot of cases, if you called a guy by his real name in front of somebody outside the locker room in those days, that guy would get fucking pissed at you real quick. What the fuck are you doing, motherfucker? So Yes, the guys used to call each other by their gimmicks. You think anybody ever came in the locker room where Abdullah the Butcher was sitting? Hi, Larry. If you were friendly with him, it was hi, Abby. And if you were some schlub, it was hello, Mr. Butcher. Because he had Mr. Butcher monogrammed on the pocket of his custom-made shirts just so that you would get that idea. But anyway, so yes, so now they call each other by their real names, and I don't know what the fuck. It's just confusing. What was the other part of that thing? Oh, the handshake.
Right.
When you went in a locker room in the old days, if you were in a territory, your first day in the territory, you're meeting a lot of people for the first time. You walk in the locker room and you shake everybody's hand and introduce yourself by your gimmick name. Hi, if I'm Chief White Owl, hi, Chief White Owl, or whatever. It's people that don't know you. If you worked some other name in a different territory and you know somebody from there, whatever the fuck. But you walk in the locker room and that would be about a 3-minute procedure because you're in one room and you're either just meeting the heels or the baby faces, whichever one you are. So there's 10 guys, maybe 12, or maybe that's the whole locker room and you're meeting 20 guys and a referee or two. And once you've done that, you've met everybody. Unless if you're in the Carolinas territory, there's a town running somewhere else. So sooner or later, you'll meet those guys. That was it. And then every night when you come in and you sit down. And if everybody's sitting there, you're shaking hands as you're putting your bag down. If somebody was getting a blowjob in the parking lot and wasn't in when you came and sat down and shook everybody's hand to say hello, and they come in later, you don't have to leap up and go over and shake their hand. You can just wave at them because you're seeing them every goddamn day. Right? And the last thing that I would do is if I came in a building at a house show or TV or anywhere else, and there is Bill Watts and his booker, Bill Dundee, or Jerry Jarrett and his business partner, Jerry Lawler, or Dusty Rhodes, the booker, talking to Jim Crockett over in the corner about some business, and me. Maybe I'm the popcorn guy. Maybe I'm the C-team referee. Maybe I'm the ring crew fellow. I'm going to go over and interrupt their conversation to stick my hand out and try to shake their hand and say, hey, hello, everybody. I'm here. I'm in the building. Fuck you. They would fire you. Get the fuck away from us. We're busy. But that's what happens now. Every time I've been in a goddamn administrative position in a wrestling promotion in the last 15 years, I go in and I'm trying to have a talk with the owner, or I'm trying to have a talk with the booker, or I'm trying to prep the goddamn TV announcers to do something, or I'm maybe discussing a finish with the main event that night. And I'll swear to God, Howie the mailroom guy and the popcorn fella, Pete, will come up and interrupt that conversation to shake our hands and tell us that they're in the building because they have been convinced by the rest of these modern marks that that is some time-honored tradition that you've got to do or you will be ostracized for it. And where it apparently came from is the WWE locker room where these guys are so bored that they need to come up with shit to do to fuck with and or bully and or rib and or just occupy themselves with the young guys coming in to act like they have fucking status. I got news for you. Whether you're on the main roster or not, unless you're in the main event, you ain't got no fucking status. So if a guy's coming in from NXT and he sees John Cena, Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman, Brock Lesnar, well, maybe stay away from Brock. He might be pissed off at human contact. Shake those motherfuckers' hands. The rest of them, it's goddamn annoying, and they're not any more important than you are. And that's the thing. This is another one of those things that's been made into a big deal. And then to the point now where some of the stars in the WWE believe this is or should be a big deal, to the point where if guys come in and see now the thing, there's 87 people. If you go to a WWE television taping, how many wrestlers you think are there? A lot more than you see on that particular one TV show. They've got everybody there standing by, other shows they're taping that same night. Then there's the agents. Then there's the fucking officials. Then there's just the important people, I use important in quotation marks, that wander around carrying papers and shit. You're saying hello and shaking hands all fucking day. And do you keep notes? Do you have a clipboard with all 97 people that you're supposed to shake the hand of? What if somebody was, I forgot, they don't go out in the parking lot and get a blowjob anymore. That's another thing we're missing from the wrestling business. What if somebody's outside playing on TikTok on their cell phone and they walk in, you haven't shaken you got to refer to their notes. Did I shake his hand? Fuck, I can't. Oh, I checked him off at 2:47 p.m. So I'm safe. He won't kill me. I shook his hand. What the fuck? A lot of guys used to just come in, wave hello, sit over in the corner, mind their own business, get dressed, go out, tear the fucking house down with a match because they're in the main event and people paid to see them. Go on their merry way. Wasn't so complicated.
Jim, our next question sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Space Cadet. Why are some wrestling venues called gardens? And what are the origins of the term squared circle?
Well, squared circle is easy because in the early days of actually pro boxing, as well as the early formative years of pro wrestling, and Brian, you've probably seen pictures, even back in I guess this was right up until John L. Sullivan was the first recognized boxing champion in the lineage and succession that we use today. But in the day, he and Jake Kilrain predated the use of gloves. They did the bare knuckle boxing, and also predating the use of an actual ring as we know it, the 4 ring posts and the ropes and etc., was a circle drawn on the ground. And it was marked off with sticks or whatever the fuck. I mean, this goes back to impromptu boxing matches in lumber camps or whatever, but there was a circle that was drawn out that this is the area of combat. And in some cases, in early rules, if you got knocked out of that circle, you lost the fight. Or that may have been the end of a round. Even in early professional boxing back in the 1880s with Sullivan and Corbett, etc., there was not a set number of rounds. A round ended when a competitor was knocked down. So one of the famous Sullivan-Kilrain fights went 75 rounds. And there was no set time limit, but and that's why that a wrestling ring is called a ring and or a squared circle, because when they began to put together a uniform surface or area for these fights or matches to be held in, you can't fucking build a goddamn circle with with the veil. How are you going to make ropes go in a circle to keep the guys in the rules were changed and modified because in a lot of cases pro boxing and pro wrestling was illegal to have in the late 1800s in a variety of states or municipalities or places. They had to have rules, just kind of like what the UFC went through when it was billed as human cockfighting. They had to establish rules to get sanctioning by the athletic commissions to be able to do this legally. Same thing 100 and something years beforehand. They had to start using gloves instead of having bare knuckle matches. They had to have set rounds instead of just being the Wild West and going until somebody couldn't continue. They also had to have a uniform fighting area with ropes to hold the people in the ring so that they wouldn't fall out into the spectators. And, you can't easily build a circle in that context. So the ring became the squared circle.
Gardens.
God, that goes back to, doesn't it go back to ancient Greece or the Roman gardens or whatever? But Madison Square Garden the original one. There's been the one that's there now is the 4th or the 5th?
I want to say it was the 5th, but now I got to go back and check.
But anyway, Madison Square Garden was the area that the original sporting venue and or a place where people could congregate was built and located. And then they took that. But I mean, there have been the gardens associated with spectator events, athletic events, things like that down through history, right? But in the United States, I think most everybody copied or took off on, as Gomer would say, Madison Square Garden. Because a lot of arenas, even they weren't named gardens, would be called the Madison Square Garden of the South or the Madison Square Garden of the West or whatever. And Louisville Gardens, in the paper, when they changed it, it was originally the Armory, because that's what it was, an armory for the Kentucky National Guard. That's why the walls are 3 feet thick. They stored munitions there. It was the largest building in the state of Kentucky when it was built in 1906. And it was called the Armory until they changed and modified it in the early 60s to try to attract more business events as well as sporting events, because Freedom Hall was taking the big shows, so they made it the Convention Center, try to attract business. Then they built a brand new convention center, so they changed the name of the building, and they said in honor of other great sporting arenas like the Madison Square Garden in New York and Cincinnati Gardens in Cincinnati, it's going to be called the Louisville Gardens. There you had it.
Well, perhaps you wanted to go to the Armory and you didn't like all this gardening crap and you want to sue.
You're not even trying anymore, are you? You're just wanting to get this over with. Yeah, I tell you what, just like the viewers, just like the listeners, you're just wanting to get it over with. Well, in that case, I'll help you out, Brian. Play the goddamn music.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Still to the rest.
Yes, folks, besides his excellent legal work, he also has the wrestling connection that he's one of us, folks. He's a wrestling fan, and Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. He's also one of the title sponsors of Bobby Fulton's big event coming up in Circleville, Ohio in March. Reunion in Round Town. Newlawoffice.com is right there on the posters, and Bobby Fulton has lined up everybody that's ever been in wrestling to appear at this convention and fan fest and wrestling event. If you want to look it up on Facebook and all the interwebs, just search for World Classic Professional Big Time Wrestling in Circleville, Ohio in March for Bobby Fulton. And newlawoffice.com is going to be helping bring that to the fans, helping the wrestling fans meet their heroes and idols in person, just as they help the average American person navigate his way through the treacherous legal waters of the American jurisprudence system. And boy, howdy, I'll tell you what, the pharmaceutical companies are going to be down on their knees begging Stephen P. New to leave them alone, because he has filed and is continuing to file the introductory lawsuits in what's going to be a big old wing-ding concerning the babies that were addicted to opioids because of the misrepresentation of these pharmaceutical companies to doctors and et cetera across the country. If you know anyone, if you know someone who's foster child or adopted child or grandchild, someone who's not in immediate care of their parents, had this syndrome and this issue when they were born, Stephen P. New wants to talk to you. Or if you have any issue, as we've mentioned, Stephen, he'll call you back. He's got a lot more energy and patience than I do. He calls everybody back and he never sleeps, and he will help you with your particular issue, or he will tell you where to go to find that help. He won't just tell you where to go. Everybody can do that. He'll tell you where to go to find help. Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. Don't even be shocked if he answers the phone when you call.
And don't be shocked if he doesn't answer the phone when you call, but
it just depends on when you call.
Let's get a few more questions before we wrap things up this week, Jim. This next one, sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com, respectfully from Matthew Johnson. I was curious to hear your thoughts on wrestlers shaking violently when selling a big move, as if they are seizing. I've seen Moxley and Danielson use this on recent AEW programming.
That's it? Okay.
That's it. Have you noticed this? Wrestlers pretending to seize up when on the mat selling?
Well, yeah, when they start shaking and etc. I mean, that's as old as the hills. I saw that 50 years ago. And, a lot of times, as a matter of fact, Handsome Jimmy, when he was a babyface, he'd come in, do ha-cha, give the heel a couple of bumps, and the heel would have something, shove it in his fucking throat. Oh, my God, he'd go down and he'd start shaking like he was having an epileptic fit. And people would go, oh, shit. If it looks real or legitimate or like something that you would do as a result of what you've just had done to you, then I have no problem with it. It gets people worried and concerned for your welfare. If it looks hokey and phony and like you're overdoing something, then no, I don't like it. But there's no rule of thumb there. I don't know what else to say.
Our next question, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi.
I just knew it had to come.
Hi, Jim. Hulk Hogan recently ranked himself as the number 2 wrestler of all time. He said Ric Flair was number 1 and Steve Austin was number 3. What are your thoughts on the Hulkster's rankings?
Well, I think he's a lot smarter than Chris Jericho. Because as we talked about earlier, Chris Jericho says there's no comparison between me and Undertaker, then proceeds to compare himself in every way to The Undertaker. Hogan is a little smarter. He puts Flair over because, and I know that a lot of the younger fans now think Flair is horrible because he used to do the helicopter and pull his dick out. I think he's horrible because he headlined a Donald Trump fundraiser. That's the only thing I've ever been able to not excuse him for. Otherwise, he's the man. He's the Nate. So Hogan puts the guy who he knows the majority of fans and people in the business would probably say is the best ever, over himself as the best ever publicly, to make himself look like the humble and unassuming Hulk we've come to know. And then, now that he's proved he's willing to say that someone else is better than him, then the guy that's right below him, meaning he's lesser than him, is the guy that wouldn't agree to come back and work with him and put him over. So it's very smart. It's Hogan. He's way far. Jericho can't see Hogan's ass. He's far ahead of Jericho in terms of playing the mind games.
Is he the greatest wrestling backstage politician of all time?
Boy, I mean, there's probably some territorial guy that subsisted for 25 years sucking up to the boss that, has been lost to the sands of time, or that if I sat and thought I could think of somebody, but on a mainstream basis, yes, he's brilliant. He's always, I mean, even when he fucks up, due to no fault of his own, Hogan has always been very careful with how he's been presented or exposed in public and on television, in the movies, whatever. The video he made, he didn't know was for public consumption is what bit him in the ass. But he's always been careful about the way he's presented in public. And, I think he's probably one of, if not the best politicians. It's not like that's the only reason he got a spot. Look at the guy physically and look at the promo and et cetera, et cetera. We can talk about all that, but
it's keeping the spot. But it's keeping the spot.
He kept it quite well for a long time.
Jim, I got another question here from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi. Let me read this one.
I'm sure you do.
Kyle O'Reilly recently said people coming into NXT don't love the business. Here's a quote. There are a lot of people coming in that I don't think have a real love for it. I'm sure they'll do well. They'll make a big splash, be a big star, and make a ton of money. But at the end of the day, if your heart really isn't into it, I don't know. What are your thoughts on Kyle O'Reilly's take on the new batch of wrestlers coming into NXT?
Yeah, well, actually saw a transcript, or not excerpts from that interview, and there was another quote he said where he said he considers himself a pro wrestler. And a lot of the other people consider they're entertainers, or they're buying into what the WWE office tells them. They're not supposed to say wrestler or whatever, and they buy into that, and that's fine with them. But he knew that, his time was dwindling, because where's a spot for Kyle O'Reilly, who considers himself a pro wrestler and wants to be a pro wrestler, when not only won't they let you be pro wrestlers, but guys that are coming in are actively saying, we're not wrestlers. It's not a place for Kyle O'Reilly, is what he was saying. And I agree with him. Kyle's always been very serious and dedicated to his training and to the business from the time he was in Ring of Honor. That's what first attracted me to want to do more with Kyle and with poor Adam Cole. But Kyle was, especially with his training, with his MMA training, with going out and working as many independent shows as he could just to get in the ring anywhere in front of anybody. He, I guess I can say this now. The statute of limitations ran out. His partner, Davey Richards, outed him one time. Kyle was from Canada and came here originally to live with Davey so that he could work more often than he could in Canada, and he was illegal. And every once in a while he could sneak home and visit the family, but he had to worry about whether he could get back, and he wouldn't go often simply because he wanted to make sure he could wrestle. And which is another thing when the guys stooge on themselves. Me and Hunter Delirious got up one day and turned on the Twitter, and there was Davey Richards had tweeted, because he was mad at, and rightfully so, that someone else had done something, but people were overlooking Kyle. He had a good sentiment, expressed it wrong, right? When he said, look at a guy like Kyle O'Reilly. It's crossed over from Canada and lives here illegally just to be able to get more experience. I'm like, you still know. Oh. And we said, stop it, take it down, cancel it. He had to call somebody that had excerpted it to take it down or whatever. I'm like, Jesus Christ. But anyway, yes, Kyle was always dedicated. And I can see, especially with the changes they made from what NXT was to what it is now, that he wouldn't want to be there, and I don't blame him.
I guess it's always been a divide, but it's only grown the last 10 years, 15 years. The people who love the wrestling, who were there because they wanted to be involved with wrestling, and the people who just show up, are probably paid more than you're paid, don't have any interest in it. It's kind of like, I hate to put it this way, but if you look at Lex Luger in like 86 and 87 and just applied that to a whole bunch of people, kind of that attitude.
Yeah, well, not even honestly, and I was there when Lex came in, and I've talked to him numerous times over the years. Lex at least understood that he was making a lot of money at to do a thing, a profession that he didn't have a lot of experience in or knowledge of, but he knew to try to learn from the people that were around him. That's why they put him with the Horsemen, and he was opposite, all the great baby faces, blah, blah, blah. He didn't get in the wrestling business thinking this is something I can pass through on my way to becoming a television celebrity of some sort. He said, okay, he may have been making more money quicker because of his look than anybody else in wrestling, and being catered to and helped along and pushed and shoved and whatever. But the end goal was still for him to be a main event guy in wrestling, making a lot of money for however many years to come. He wasn't trying to do it so he'd get in the movies. And that's what most of the jack-offs that now, and you can't even fucking blame these guys in some cases, them, because they're led to think that's what this business is, a way to get on television and be a celebrity and have reality TV shows about me because I'm somebody somewhere. That's what it looks like. A lot of these, they see indie shows where it looks like, oh, they're doing cool moves and people are cheering. I could do that, and then I could be in a movie and get a reality TV show on whatever fucking network. They all just want to be celebrities of some description without factoring into you need to be really good at something to be famous. They don't care about that anymore. So it's easier to get into wrestling to get on TV than to get in actual TV these days. So they just all want to get into wrestling so they can get on TV.
How would you compare someone like Luger to someone like Brock in terms of early in their career being paid way more money than they probably should have to start? How does that affect a wrestler?
I think Brock was obviously visibly less interested in the wrestling business than Lex was. But see, the thing is, Lex was a very intelligent, well-spoken guy. I mean, that was not a rib. He had either a 3.8 or a 4.0 grade average, and he was a very, well-spoken, well-mannered type of fellow, whereas, Brock's the goddamn jock that they push through because he's a genetic beast, and, and they pride those in the major colleges. Lex was not a top-level athlete that was a star player for the college. He was, he went for the cosmetic, the bodybuilding. So I think Lex probably had exhibited a little bit more interest at the start in learning how this shit worked. I think Brock just had the demeanor. Maybe he's just always, sullen and quiet or whatever the fuck. He's not a fireball personality, as we mentioned. He's not a jolly joker that likes to tell jokes and laugh. I've seen him laugh more on TV the last 3 weeks than I ever had. He was just doing it from the start. Go, I guess this is what I'm going to do to make a lot of money. And that good for him.
Jim, our next question sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Jeff in upstate New York. It's a cold Saturday morning here in upstate New York, and I'm seated fireside with a cup of coffee in hand, a plate of French toast a la Last, and watching Smoky Mountain Wrestling from March 26, 1994. Mid-sip of coffee, I heard Vince McMahon, in his old-school local promo voice, not only promote the Bluegrass Brawl, but also refer to you as, quote, a combination of Rhett Butler, Ted Turner, Red Barber, and Colonel Sanders all rolled into one. Needless to say, I nearly spewed my coffee all over my breakfast tray. A simply amazing promo by Vince. My question to you, Jim, is whose idea was that promo, and what did you think of it at the time?
Well, the idea for Vince to do the promo was mine. And after giving him the briefest gist of the subject to talk about, that line that he mentioned and every other part of the promo was Vince's. The context was that we were coming up on the Bluegrass Brawl, the main event of the Bluegrass Brawl in Pikeville, Kentucky, at the college gym that sold out for the third year in a row. Was the loser? No, that was the second year. So that was the second of 3 sellouts.
Right.
The loser leave town match between the Rock and Roll Express and the Heavenly Bodies. And it was inside a cage, the ultimate blow off, and the losing team would have to leave Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And I wanted to make sure that people knew that somebody was actually going. This was when the Bodies had been contacted and asked to come up, and we'd been making shots for the WWF full time, but they wanted the Bodies to come up or making shots, but they wanted the Bodies to come up full time. So I researched something that had been done in the Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee loser leave town match in 1983. they had other promoters send in video saying, we are anxious to sign the loser of this contest because one guy's going to be available. He's not going to be able to wrestle. In that case, it was Memphis. In this case, Smoky Mountain, wherever. So to make both participants in the match, whether it be the Bodies and Rock and Roll, whether it be Lawler and Dundee, whether it be any loser leave, to make the participants both look more important, you have other promoters saying that, well, hey, if one's going to be available, we'll take either one. And I also had Eddie Marlin on behalf of the USWA in Memphis cut a promo saying that we would love to have either the Rock and Roll Express or the Heavenly Bodies. I'm trying to think who all they had with the Lawler Dundee. I know they had one from, who did it in Georgia? Was it Gordon Soley?
Or Freddie Miller?
Or was it Freddie Miller that did that, who was their TV personalities then? But point being, that's what it was done to make the match more important, to show that the eyes of the world are upon this match and the talent in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And the biggest thing was when the Bodies lost, that I'd had Vince McMahon on saying that we are anxious to engage in contract talks with whoever loses this match. They show up on WWF television. Son of a bitch, he wasn't lying. But the Rock and Roll Express won. And they didn't have to go to the WWF. They could, I swear to God, the fans in Knoxville, several of them said, we're so glad the Rock and Roll won so they could stay here and they wouldn't have to go to the WWF. But that's what that was. And Vince knew, all I had to say was, hey, we're having a loser leave. You're interested in either one to make the match more important. And then he took it from there. But that was the situation. And it just makes sense. If somebody's going to have to go, where are they going to go? They going to go home, or does it make your company and your talent look better if all the other promoters in the major companies want either guy, whichever one loses? Now, so we had, at that time, we didn't have a lot of territories that we could, draw from to represent, but we had Vince with the WWF. We had Eddie Marlin with USWA on the other end of the state. The only real promotion we didn't have was WCW because nobody wants to go there.
So Rhett Butler and Colonel Sanders, I guess I can kind of see where Vince would pull that from. Ted Turner and Red Barber are the interesting ones that he compared you to.
Well, and Red Barber, the old sportscaster.
Right.
Because I had the colorful way of speaking, and I think he was trying to knock Ted Turner and say that, I was somewhat of a millionaire playboy like that, but look at Cornette. So if he's compared to Ted Turner, I think it was a sideways slap in Turner's face.
And the drive-thru is closed. I need to bring the keyboard closer to here so I can really play some sounds at the end of the show.
Yeah, you could really knock some tunes out if it was just closer.
That's
right. That's the only reason you can't play it. It's just too far away.
Of course, you could hear more of this kind of zaniness and wrestling history and fun talk on the Jim Cornette Experience when it debuts this weekend wherever you find your favorite podcast. And of course, next week, right back here on the Drive-Thru. Get access to classic episodes of the Drive-Thru and the Experience. The archive goes back to the beginning in 2013 at patreon.com/Cornette. For $5 a month to get access to the archive, patreon.com/Cornette. Subscribe to the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. It'll come right up. Full episodes, clips of episodes, omnibus collections. If you hear something on the show and you want to share it, the best way to do so with the exclusive Travis Heckel artwork is the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at @GreatBrianLast. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcast. Of course, the time has come. Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com, Jim.
That's right. Torture the feather bottoms now. JimCornette.com, T-shirts, DVDs, autographed pictures, behind-the-curtain graphic novels, all right there. And plus, the incredible service you'll get from the entire Featherbottom family, whether it be Fanny or Felcher or even Hotchkiss himself, cannot be understated.
at jimcornette.com. Of course, the drive-thru is brought to you by the law office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until next week on the drive-thru, and of course this weekend on The Experience, for Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Tally-ho!